College football fans, in place of the usual Thursday night college football game, this is the consolation prize, I guess. We talk college football and get geared up for Friday night and Saturday right here at the Voice for College Football. Welcome in. We just concluded our weekly Thursday night Miami show with the Wholesome One. We thank him and would welcome you to all head on over there each and every Wednesday and Thursday night for our Miami shows. And if you're unfamiliar with our team channels and our team live streams that we present each and every week, Iowa, USC, and Nebraska on Tuesday night, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Florida State, Michigan, Miami on Wednesday, Miami on Thursday, and West Virginia on Friday night. We will see you Friday night at 8 Eastern time. It is a week 3 of college football, and if week 3 is as good as week 2, consider yourself blessed, fortunate, lucky, whatever you want to throw in there, whatever your belief system, lucky to be college football fans for week 3. There doesn't appear to be any mammoth, monumental type games involving just the major brands of college football as we experienced with Alabama and Texas in week 2 or Ohio State, Notre Dame in week 1, but what turned out to be the best games. Mostly those under the radar, nice little matchups that we will review right here. I'm going to run down my TV schedule, my personal TV schedule, what I will be watching. And also I'm going to run down my top 5 games of the week. So Michael Hogue, thank you for the suggestion. And Michael wanted to hear my top 5 games of the week, and others said in the chat that they wanted to hear that as well. So got it right here, my top 5 games of the week. Unfortunately, since I've been busy for 5 or 6 hours, I didn't have time to build graphics to highlight that. So you're going to have to actually listen to me. But we're going to run down the TV schedule and the viewing strategy here at the Voice of College Football headquarters. Right here at the headquarters, the Voice of College Football. We always have about 3 or 4 monitors fired up to watch the games, and it's very key of how I strategize my viewing habits from noon on. We posted a video last Saturday night off the heels of Texas A&M's loss to Appalachian State that has gained some attention. So check out that video. You'll see a thumbnail of Jimbo Fisher and some disparaging comments there on the thumbnail and my take on it, Jimbo's handling of Texas A&M football. So please check out that video. All right, we've got an Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. Please check it out. Amazon link is key. About half of you that I'm speaking with right now will shop Amazon this month. That's what the stats say. So when you do so, please use the link in the description section. We also have a link to give me a call. That's in the live chat as well. So I will post it again. But I've dropped the link in the chat to talk college football with me. But let's get to our TV viewing strategy while we let the phone calls make their way in. And we'll announce a big Friday night here at the Voice of College Football. Also, keep in mind that, especially if you're in the Nebraska area or you don't mind driving to see a Big Ten football game for free, we've got a big ticket giveaway on our Nebraska channel that we launched this past Tuesday night, courtesy Gene Arthur Associates, our sponsor there at the Nebraska channel. So this past week, we launched our ticket giveaway. So we are giving away free Nebraska tickets to 4 games, 2 tickets per game, 4 games against, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And of course, it goes without saying, and I'm going to prep you for it right now. You're going to see it all night, and you're going to see it more in the future than you've ever seen it before. Join us on Patreon, which includes the Discord. You get the Discord link. You can talk to these knuckleheads in the chat all the time, 24/7, 365. You can argue behind my back without me monitoring it. How about that? That's worth the $5 a month right there. Then in addition to that, you get my picks, which I'm going to make the excuse that I was very unlucky last week. That's all I'm going to say. That's my excuse. I was unlucky. 2 of my picks going to overtime when they had the spread beat, and then they go to overtime and they lose it. Anyway, typically 60% against the spread, 80% straight up against the money line. So you get my picks, you get the picks from the media members like Steve Dace and Tony Gerdeman and Steve Hellwagon and others. And then you also get our Discord link. That's the headliner. I thought it used to be my picks, but the headliner is the Discord link. And you get to talk with Exploring with Ben, Tim, Jordan Bowman's in there, Will's in there, One Scoop John. I don't want to miss anyone. Eric, all sorts of good people are there in Discord. And post-game shows galore this weekend, all over the place. Florida State fans, you get the luxury, the pleasure, and the scintillating experience of me hosting your post-game show, Florida State fans, tomorrow night after Louisville FSU. All right, once again, I will leave the link in the chat. Join the show if you'd like to talk college football. We are going to preview week 3. Let's get to it right now. What we've got in week 3 is, of course, a game with ACC implications right out of the gate. It's the ACC opener for Florida State on the road against Louisville. Louisville lost its ACC opener in blowout fashion at Syracuse. Malik Cunningham got it back together, as did the Cardinals defense in defeating UCF with a end zone interception with about 3 minutes left last week, 20-14. Jordan Travis and a pretty stingy Florida State defense coming off that 24-23 win over LSU, plus a bye week to get ready for Louisville on a Friday night. I contemplated this. I contemplated watch party for the Florida State Louisville game. Then at 8 Eastern on CBS Sportsnet, we have Air Force, the Falcons, a possible playoff underdog Cinderella team from the group of 5, maybe the latest to make a push in the line of Houston, UCF, Cincinnati. It would be possibly Air Force at 2-0. They beat Colorado by 31 last week. They've got Wyoming on the road. All right, let's look at the noon games before we take a call. At noon, the most attractive game on the surface is Oklahoma-Nebraska. They played a close game last season in Norman. Of course, we know the Scott Frost saga. Nebraska should be amped with Mickey Joseph taking over. They've got all the pressure off their backs from this continuing Scott Frost controversy that's been going on for seemingly ever. So Nebraska, about an 11-point underdog at home against OU. Brent Venables takes his show on the road for the first time. First Power 5 game, first road game for Brent Venables as Oklahoma head coach. So that's going to be my focus first and foremost, although I tend to believe that Purdue-Syracuse game may turn out to be the best game of the window. I'm anxious to see the Syracuse team that ran it up on Louisville 2 weeks ago, 31-7, then held serve against UConn and put up almost 50 points, take on Purdue. Close loss at home to Penn State, and then they routed Indiana State last week, 56-0. Those are the 2 games of note at noon. And then my third option would be, of course, Georgia, South Carolina. I may, in fact, actually start watching that game, thinking that Georgia is going to be up by 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, and then I might as well watch the competitive portion of the game, at least competitive on the scoreboard, until it gets away from South Carolina. This matchup looks pretty similar to what we saw last year, except South Carolina's got a capable top 15, top 20 quarterback in Spencer Rattler. They did not have that last season when they lost to the Dogs 40-13. Let's quickly get to this 3:30 window. So those are my 3 games of note. First and foremost, again, I'm going to start out Oklahoma, Nebraska as the one game here at the Voice of College Football. Purdue, Syracuse is my second screen game. Georgia, South Carolina in the 3 spot. The only game that I can see really getting any attention past that, really nothing at all. The possibility of Western Kentucky and Indiana on the Big Ten Network, maybe. All right, then we've got some games at 1 o'clock of insignificance at 3:30. Okay, fitting in there at the oddball time, of course, Notre Dame on NBC. Of course, Notre Dame Cal, that's on NBC Peacock. I could care less and will not be watching that game. All right, let's go to 3:30. I am really torn between Penn State Auburn and BYU Oregon. I believe that those could be the 2 best games of the week. But I'll take the slight Big Ten SEC lean to Penn State and Auburn. When the SEC and the Big Ten get together, it's special. It just is, because they are the 2 power brokers in the sport. Then my second choice is BYU and Oregon. My third choice is going to be, you know what, at 4 o'clock, and under the radar selection there, Houston and Kansas. Houston and Kansas. Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. I expect the Rebels to roll. But that's how we look in the 3:30 window. We'll get to prime time a little bit later. Let's start out our night with Sean. Sean's on the line. How you doing, Sean?
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
I'm doing just fine. What's going on tonight?
Oh, man, nothing much. It's been kind of interesting. I'm a big Buckeye fan. I've called a couple of times. But I thought I'd give you a call. It's been interesting this week with Notre Dame and Nebraska and also Texas A&M. But I just wanted to call in. There's a guy on, I think his name is John, and he has a show called Always Irish. And that guy, he's a pretty funny personality. It would be, I think he'd be fun to.
Yeah, we know John very well. John's a friend. He's been on here many times.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, he was pretty funny this week. He had a couple of good videos, but really the game of the week is Ohio State's probably toughest out-of-conference game with Toledo, probably your MAC champion, at least according to Phil Steele.
Yeah, it could be. And almost beat Notre Dame last year.
They did. They probably would beat them this year, just the way it's looking. But I just wanted to give you a call. It looked like you had somebody. I didn't realize I was going to be the first person on. So that's
you are the one, Sean.
Great, awesome. Well, what do you have any thoughts on Wisconsin losing and what that means for the Big Ten? Because really, I'm kind of upset that with Notre Dame losing and then Wisconsin losing, it really does diminish the Buckeyes' schedule. So
you should only be concerned with that if Ohio State loses, 2 games? Or doesn't win the Big Ten? Is that why you're concerned about the schedule?
Well, I'm concerned because I'm not sure, besides Michigan, I'm not really sure how well we'll be tested going into the playoffs. And
I'm sorry, Sean, are you concerned from a scheduling standpoint, or are you concerned from a preparation standpoint?
I'm concerned from a preparation standpoint.
Okay.
I think if we go through the schedule and we go undefeated or one loss, we still have a great chance of getting in. But it's just I'm not sure how well we'll be prepared. I'm a little bit worried because Stroud just refuses to run the football, and I know we didn't need him to run last week, but I think we can get stopped fairly easily. if he just decides to not run, they're just going to drop 8 or 9 back, rush 3. Stroud refuses to run. They just bracket. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, that seems to be the way to play Ohio State. You force them to be patient. We don't know about the health of Jackson Smith and Jigba. Julian Fleming. Of course, he's not proven anything, but he's a tremendous talent, and JSN has proven to be arguably the best receiver in country, and we don't know about. So that's the way to play Ohio State, but they countered that against Notre Dame, and you know what? I'm going to say something that seems to be unpopular because people pile on certain teams when they lose a game, which people either just like to troll. And if you're just having fun on social media, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. And if this is, it's college football, it's entertainment for some people, and it goes beyond the white lines, and they just like to make a kind of a, an exercise of just picking on whatever teams are having issues. I don't necessarily think Notre Dame's like a bad football team by any stretch. They're a talented football team. They have some issues. They lost their quarterback. The backup might be just as good, Drew Pine. He's not as talented, but he might be just as good. And Notre Dame is going to either beat or put a scare into some teams that are supposed to, at this point, blow them out. So I don't really look at the Ohio State Notre Dame game and think, okay, well, that's just an average win now. It's not.
Well, I think by the end of the season, we'll kind of know whether it is or not. But
yeah,
I'm just a little bit worried that for them at least, they might have came into the game. I think we all kind of thought they were slightly overrated, and they might not finish in the top 10 by the end of the year. I remember calling in and saying, "Oh yeah, for sure." I remember calling in and saying, because there was always like one team that was in the top 10 that wouldn't be ranked, and I remember calling in and saying Notre Dame because they had a new quarterback, a new coach, and there was a couple of other things that their schedule. I think it's like you were talking about how a team that will lose 2 or 3 more games than what they did the previous season, and how that's like an anomaly, and how that always happens to a top 10 team. And so that was the team that I picked for that. But one thing for them, at least for Notre Dame, to kind of talk about them really quick and switch gears from the Buckeyes. I told John on his show that if I'm Notre Dame, I'd be pretty worried because I'm not really sure. Let's say they do have like a 6-6 season or a 7-5 season.
Yeah.
Next year they're going to be starting in the same boat that they started this year. Tyler Buckner is going to be coming off the bench if he's the quarterback. And then let's say he's not the guy after next year. Then you're starting all over again with possibly a true freshman in Carr. Like, then you're just starting it again. So, like, there's a good chance they won't be, like, a really good team until 2025. And I'm just not sure if Freeman could withstand that. I mean, do you think that's pretty good analysis? Or
yeah, I think it's correct a majority of the time. But if you really have a top flight football program, if you're really believing to be as good as what Marcus Freeman believes his program is going to be and what they're recruiting at right now, then yeah, that brings a little bit of uncertainty or question to a particular season to have an unproven quarterback. But was Kyler Murray unproven at one time when he was the starting quarterback at Oklahoma? Was CJ Stroud unproven last year when he started for Ohio State? Was Bryce Young unproven when he started his Heisman Trophy winning season at Alabama? And we could go on and on and on. Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. And so if you recruit the right guy, then
I guess,
yes, experience matters, but it's not everything.
I guess too, for my analysis for next year for them, like they're losing a big chunk of their defensive players.
Yeah.
So like they're going to have a brand new defense. Their offense is going to be unproven again. So they're going to be in maybe a worse boat than they were this year, just because both sides of the ball is going to be very questionable. So I don't know. I don't know. It seems like this could really spiral in a bad way. And let's say they start losing some of the recruits that they have. I know they're ranked number 2 in the country right now, but yeah, I could see them possibly losing some of those. And then the recruits, freshmen, we know this as Buckeye fans. They don't really, they don't necessarily always pan out in the first year. It normally takes a year or two being in the system. So that's why I'm thinking like 2025, if Tyler Buckner doesn't work out. That's really the first shot I think they have of being a good team.
What's a good team? What's that defined as?
I would say a team that could possibly go 11-1.
Okay.
Have a team that can possibly make it to the playoff.
Well, if Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, having inherited the roster that he did, having secured at least to this point the number 2 recruiting class in the country, and if even a lot goes wrong, it's still going to be the 7th or 8th best recruiting class in the country. If we're sitting here 2 games into 2022 and he doesn't have a good season, meaning 11-1 until 2025, then he's really not a good football coach.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking this because next year they have the Buckeyes and USC's rising. And I'm not really sure if they have Clemson. Yeah.
If you're that good, then you beat the teams on the schedule. But if we're looking at Marcus Freeman not having a chance to be good until his 4th season, and he was handed a top 10 team, and he had a top 5 recruiting class right out of the gate. He was handed a top 5 recruiting class that he helped bring in the door for 2022, and he's got another top 5 class for 2023. And the best he's going to do is maybe have a chance to win 11 games his 4th season. Then he's really not good at his profession.
Okay, that's fair. I would say this. I'm kind of skeptical of him, just because Luke Fickell has kept on keeping on since he left. And I mean, Notre Dame, they did have a good defense before he got there. I mean, they made the playoff in 2020, right? So I just 2020, I think they made it. So I'm a bit skeptical. I'm not really sure how much he's actually brought to the table other than the recruiting prowess. But like I said, if they have a bad season, that stuff can switch really quickly, and especially if kids get money thrown at them and with the whole new dynamics now. But Mark, it's good talking to you. Thank you so much for doing the show. It's great to talk college football during the year.
It sure is. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Go Buckeyes.
Got our guy Sean on the line. Yes, it's great talking college football all off season. Then we finally get the games. And on Saturday, I'm reminded why I do this. It's to watch football all day. We got Aiden on the line. Aiden, how's it going?
What's up, brother? How you been?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. I'm going to the Nebraska-Oklahoma game in Lincoln tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
So, I'm very, very excited for that. But what's the panic level on Oregon if they lose to BYU?
What should it be, or what will it be? It should be minimal. It should be minimal. They have a first-year head coach. He's a first-time head coach. If they truly believe in him and what he's doing, then they may have an 8-4 season. That just may be the way it is right out of the gate, and that's not horrendous. But what will it be? I don't know what Oregon fans think of their program and how hypersensitive they are to that sort of thing. I don't think, by the measurement of our guy Ryan Winter, who joins us on a regular basis, he's pretty chill. He's really chill and okay with, understands that it takes time to accomplish things. So I am a believer in Dan Lanning at this point. I don't know that the Georgia game meant a whole lot, except these two teams aren't even in the same stratosphere at the moment. Although I would guess if they played tomorrow, the game would be much closer, but still not competitive, but much closer, not a complete annihilation. Maybe
it would probably
31
be
to
at
10, something like that. But
it would probably be at like that 17-24 ish range.
yeah, I would guess. But this is going to tell us a lot. BYU's in a tough spot too because they just had an emotional win in overtime at home. Now they've got to go on the road, and sometimes it's difficult to win back-to-back games against tough opponents, and especially when the second game's on the road. So this happens every year. People get too overreactive, too emotional over one result. These teams are going to beat each other. There are a few elite teams, and there's a pretty good section of really bad teams. 30 of them, something like that. And then a couple elite teams that aren't going to lose or they're going to lose once. And then everybody else is somewhere between 6-6 and 10-2. And a lot of those 6-6 teams are going to be real close to being 9-3 teams, but they're going to blow some games, and there's going to be a lot of 9-3 teams that are real close to being 6-6 teams.
But I think Miami beats Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are there with you.
Because I think that they have the clear advantage in the quarterback department.
Yes, I agree.
And also I'm a huge believer that if next year Jimbo Fisher doesn't go 10-2, that he should be fired.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That's going to be he's on year 5, right? This is year 5. Wow. Yeah, if he's year 6 and doesn't go 10-2, yeah, that's it. Except we've got a major buyout to deal with. And I don't know. I know it's Texas money and they've got deep pockets, really deep pockets. But I don't know that even they are going to want to go into what's probably at that point going to be an $80 million range to buy him out.
But in my opinion, that recruiting class they have with the year of seasoning, plus all the guys Alabama's slated to lose for next year, this Texas A&M roster, at least next year, should be competing for the SEC West Division title.
Well, sure they should be. But if Auburn ever gets its act together again, whether it be under Brian Harsin or another coach, and Brian Kelly is just getting started at LSU, it's the best division in college football. It's not even close, but this is at least an opportunity to take advantage of a few programs when they're down, and they're not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that Jimbo could start the season 1-5, looking at their schedule too.
Yeah, he could. Wouldn't that be something?
And I also think another reason why I have Miami winning this game is because I think that Texas A&M doesn't have the stars yet. Like, they don't have those elite players on their football team. And again, Miami has TBD, so.
Wait a minute. You just said that Miami's got a better roster than Texas A&M. Is that what I heard?
I'm saying that I think Texas A&M has a better roster than Miami, but I just don't think they have those dudes yet. Maybe that will come when their recruiting class has a year of seasoning.
Well, they've recruited well before this, so they should just flat out be better. Yeah, the ridiculously crazy recruiting class was the 22 class, and they're only freshmen, and so you can't count on them. But they should be popping a little bit. We saw Shamar Stewart with a big sack, and the wide receiver
Evan Stewart.
Thank you. I was thinking they've pretty much got the same name. Yeah, Shamar Stewart got a sack last week against App State. Evan Stewart had their longest pass play. I think he led them in receiving. So those guys are already getting involved and they're already showing themselves capable, but they're not going to be the players this year that they're eventually going to be. So the impact of this 22 Texas A&M class is going to be, I don't want to say minimal, but it's going to be
Limited, so to say.
When they're sophomores and juniors, if they're still around. If they're not somebody else.
And I think that Haynes King is really going to struggle with this Miami secondary.
Haynes King struggled with the Appalachian State secondary. So I can't argue with you there. I think he, by the small sample size that I've seen him against anyone, starting with Colorado last year, even the Buffaloes on the road, he has trouble at this point throwing against air.
Yeah, I think Miami's gonna try to move James Williams and Cameron Kitchens around and try to confuse Haynes King.
Yep. I think Haynes King's going to have a short leash this week. I don't think there's going to be much tolerance for Haynes King this week. And I don't like to knock on him. He's just starting out his career and could turn out to be an excellent quarterback. But for right now, he's a guy that's really fast, really elusive, that is struggling as a passer.
Especially when you have a Colonel Wingman, a 5-star in that depth chart.
Yeah, well, we understand that. I don't know if he's ready. I think Max Johnson's going to be the guy that's going to get the call off the bench if he doesn't get the start.
It's again, I like Max Johnson better than Haynes King. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know how much better he is than Haynes King.
Well, right now he's considerably better. He threw 27 touchdowns in the SEC against 6 picks last year. He led LSU in a mess of a season to a win over Texas A&M and took them down the field and threw the game-winning touchdown pass in the last 10 seconds of the game. I'm not touting him as a great quarterback, but he doesn't provide the running threat, but as a passer, he and Haynes King aren't comparable today. They are not comparable.
Yeah. One more thing before I let you go.
Okay.
I think CJ Stroud has got to start running the ball, because I feel like if he doesn't, even when JSN hypothetically comes back, which we don't know about his health. I hope he's okay. I think teams can be multiple with their coverage when he's passing because they know he's not going to run because he honestly doesn't want to at this point.
Yeah, I don't get it with CJ Stroud. I understand and admire a guy that doesn't want to be a runner. We want him to be a quarterback. His coach wants him to be a quarterback, a passing quarterback first and foremost. But when the field opens up to you, take the 6 yards, the 8 yards. Sometimes it could turn out to be the 15 yards. He's an athlete. He can run. He can move.
Yeah,
He shows that when he runs across the field back and forth, when he keeps his eyes downfield and he's still looking to throw. But when there are gaps in the pocket, just think about the geometry of 53 yards wide, and you drop back to pass, and you've got 5 offensive linemen, and you've got 4, maybe 5 defensive players rushing, and they're big men, but they can only take up so much space. It's inevitable. It happens every game a dozen times that gaps open up in the rush that lead to just gaping holes of grass. And why you wouldn't step up in that and take your 10 yards, I don't understand.
And also, even if he does run it a little bit, even that I think could go a long way for Ohio State's offense.
Yeah. Well, I'm not here to criticize CJ Stroud. There's little to criticize, but he does need to take off and run usually 2 or 3 times a game. Aiden, I appreciate you stopping by. Have a great weekend, and we will hopefully see you tomorrow night.
I'll try to get there tomorrow night, but I have a late-ass flight. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you do whatever you need to. Bye, Aiden. Have a good one.
All right, you too, brother. Thanks.
Aiden's going to the Oklahoma-Nebraska game. I forgot that. So late flight. Aiden, take care of yourself. Don't check in tomorrow if need be. All right. Harrison's on the line. Harrison, how are you?
I am great, Mark. I'm glad to be back. And I think you saw the questions I got put up, so let's just get into it.
Yeah, I did not see your questions. I'm not.
You cannot see my questions. Okay.
Private chat while I'm doing other things. But anyway, that's why we actually have the phone call, is you can ask the questions. I don't need to be prepared for them, but I appreciate the gesture.
All right. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was obviously Nebraska names. It's the hot topic going around right now. Yes. I wanted to throw someone in who I don't feel like has been getting enough respect in this regard. Gary Patterson, he's chugging it out at Texas.
Sure.
Yeah, he's chugging it out at Texas, doing the same thing Saban does at Bama, but with Sark. I mean, you see people talk about him. They're saying this man's packing in, packing down, and planning games. And from what we've seen, he almost won that Bama game for him. So I think Gary Patterson could really be the person that Nebraska needs, and someone that's really realistic for him, because he's looking to get back into coaching.
Yeah. So again, we went live the moment that Scott Frost's firing was announced, and we were here for 2 or 3 hours. We talked about it then. He was a guy that I brought up pretty quickly, and we also went on the Nebraska show a few nights ago. Same thing there. Talked about everything that he's done, everything he's accomplished, which is exceptional, top of the line, top rung, top tier. TCU, middling, somewhere between the group of 5 and the Power 5, and obviously he made TCU a national power. However, I would like to know a little bit better what happened besides probably him just not being able to find the quarterback that he needs, but their defensive units at TCU, for as stellar as they were 2013, 14, 15, in that range, they made the Big 12 championship game in 2017. They weren't a great team. They were they were good. His last 4 seasons there were not good.
Not impressive, but you got to think a guy like that, he's getting basically a year to go on this little sabbatical, sit down, think about what he's doing. You know, he's not just sitting around doing nothing, complaining to himself, sitting on the couch eating a pint of ice cream. This guy's working. He's working for Sark at Texas, not at Alabama. He's putting together game plans for them. I mean, I said earlier that people are saying great things about him, and I think he's had this time to kind of reinvent himself. I mean, obviously needs to be proven, but I think in an interview he's got to be one of their top candidates.
Yeah, I have been a big Gary Patterson fan for a long, long time, and have always ranked him among the best in the country. Again, I would like to know, I would be asking, if I was interviewing Gary Patterson, I would be asking him about his team's performance the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's obviously going to be something big in an interview with him.
Yeah, the defensive performance was not close to what it was before, and just to try to get to see if maybe, like, he obviously has always been known for his fire, his passion, very high energy guy, kind of like a Tom Allen type, and sometimes guys like that. Now, if he burned out, let's say he's burned out. It obviously didn't come quickly. I was going to make the comment, some guys like that burn out quickly. Now, he's been a football coach for 30 years. So, but burn out quicker than others. So I don't know if he's necessarily, I'm not saying this for sure, but again, I would go down this path in an interview to try to figure out whether he's lost some of his passion and energy to grind to the degree that he needs to lift Nebraska past the likes of Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to get his name out there because you really haven't heard a lot about him. But I actually do want to pivot off Nebraska to another team in the Big Ten West, Minnesota. Are they making a run this year? Wisconsin is down. Iowa, where's the offense?
Do we know Wisconsin's down?
Do we know they're down?
Not done this a number of times before?
They have. I'll give you this much.
To go through their history of losing a non-conference game and then contending for a Big Ten championship. So I'm not saying you're wrong. They might be down.
They're not with Jonathan Smith this year. They're not obviously that great. I'm thinking Minnesota really has a chance, and I think they were number one in like total offense. PJ Fleck getting it done. What do you think about that?
Minnesota's number one in total offense.
I thought that was the stat. I might be completely
Well, I think you're right, but let's understand what that truly means right now. It doesn't mean anything. They're executing their offense against Western Illinois and New Mexico State. So I'm not going to go crazy about that. I think PJ Fleck's an excellent coach. He's one of the best as well. Tanner Morgan, I think the real intriguing part of this, which I certainly talked about during the offseason and in my predictions leading into the season, is more so that Tanner Morgan being reunited with Kirk Shiraka, who was his offensive coordinator when he threw 30 TDs and had the third best TD pick ratio in the nation to Joe Burrow and Tua. And now they're back together, and Mo Ibrahim's healthy and hopefully going to make it through an entire season. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And the defense, I don't know that a lot of people paid attention to how good Minnesota's defense was last year. They lost really impact players, but they do return 7 starters from that defense. So yeah, Minnesota's an intriguing team that I almost pulled the trigger on winning the division, but I didn't quite do it.
All right.
I haven't seen anything to change my mind except for Iowa's offense is inexplicably even worse than anyone could possibly imagine. And I usually wouldn't overreact or jump the gun after 2 games, but if Iowa had Penn State's offense the last 5 years, and then they performed like this the first 2 games of this season, I'd be saying, okay, this looks really bad. This is horrible, but they'll figure things out and they can't be this bad. But they've been almost this bad for 15 years on offense. So this is just, I really hate to say this because I think Kirk Ferentz is an exceptional coach and I have a ton of respect for him. And I think he's earned that respect in the sport. But why he doesn't do anything about it is beyond me. He has shown himself to be, I don't want to use the word incompetent, but just by not addressing this, I don't have an answer for it. It's inexcusable. I'll use that term.
I mean, it's only going to create more problems for him down the road because obviously it's Brian Ferentz, his boy.
Yeah, it's his
So
boy.
you got to ask questions about that and how that comes into conflict with it.
Yeah.
And that just creates more problems and more problems. And if you see this keep rolling, it's just going to be, I don't want to say he's going to be gone, but man.
You could almost take any team in the Big Ten and line them up against the 2 opponents that they've faced and just run the ball off tackle and throw play action passes on 3rd down off of that and produce more than 150 yards of offense and 2 scoring drives of 5 yards and 15 yards in 2 games. It's just, I mean,
like literally Spencer Petras is the 2nd worst quarterback in college football. Week 1, he was the worst. Like that's not me making it up. He was like a 1.5 QBR.
Yeah.
It's just terrible.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna skip Brigham Young. Yeah, so pivot around again from Nebraska. That's the fun thing we're doing tonight. Pivot to Oregon State. You want to know how I'm pivoting from Nebraska to Oregon State? You know what these teams both have in common?
Mike Riley.
Prodigal son returns to coach the team. Jonathan Smith led the team to an 11-1 season in 2000.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Mm-hmm. So
I watched it. Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's my fun pivot, but
okay.
I want to talk about Oregon State. You know, they got USC week 4. That's going to be a tough game. We're going to see a lot from them that we haven't seen with them playing Fresno State, which is arguably the conference's best non-conference win.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever else they played, I think it was FCS. I might be wrong though.
But
I think they got a real chance here.
They beat Boise.
Yeah, Boise's been, I don't want to say down, but not at their Boise levels as of late. But yeah, I think they got a real chance to win the North. But obviously that comes.
They need to be one of the top 2 seeds in the conference to go to the championship game. So it's not North-South.
Yeah.
This year. Yeah.
I've always forget about the Pac-12.
Well, they just started that this year.
They did.
Yeah. They announced that. They made a pretty bold move because it usually takes these conferences, once they announce something, like 3 years to implement it. I don't know why, but they just announced it like a month before the season, George Kliavkoff, to say that this is what we're doing this year. So the top 2 seeds, even though they're still divided in divisions, they could have this championship game between 2 teams in the same division.
I still think they can do it if they
I do
run
too.
Their schedule. Absolutely. It's a possibility. And just my first thoughts hearing this as a schmuck who hasn't heard it before is obviously this is going to be a springboard kind of thing. Man. All right. Well, yeah. So, yeah. Last thing I wanted to talk about was Brigham Young. They got home games against Notre Dame and Arkansas this year. I think they can have a realistic chance against Arkansas, especially Notre Dame. I don't know if Notre Dame's going to be even like a double-digit favorite against playing at Brigham Young.
The Notre Dame BYU game is in Vegas.
Yeah,
they're playing in Vegas.
Still, you got to feel like that's home turf for BYU fans compared to Notre Dame, but I don't really know how well Mormons travel. All right. I think that's about all I got for tonight.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate you calling. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Bama Boys got a hot take for us. Drake May will be in New York. That kid is the real deal. It's too bad his defense is trash. Well, his defense being trash may open up more scoring opportunities for him and more reasons to throw the ball 50 times. But I agree. I saw some of the App State game. And then last week, North Carolina, who did they play? I'm losing it. They beat App State. Who did they beat last week? Shoot. Did they play a conference game last week? No, they played another. Oh, they played Georgia State. Yes, they played Georgia State. They only beat them 35-28. Anyway, we got Jimmy on the line. Jimmy, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, how you doing? You hear me well?
I'm good. Yeah, I got you.
Kind of talking about UNC, sorta. I want to just talk about. I feel like this is kind of a big week for the ACC. We got coming up here. Quite a few non-conference games against other Power 5 teams, and I think you talked about this in your power rankings. A lot of the conferences are sort of parity right now. There hasn't been any one conference that's looked dominant so far.
I don't think so, no. I've got my preconceptions about who's good and who's not, meaning SEC, Big Ten, but it's not being proven by the results. The SEC results are the best, but not by a wide margin. And the ACC has had a kind of a mixed bag. You know, the FSU game against LSU. I know LSU. As soon as you mention any kind of possible big win at this point in the season, the conclusion that most people are going to draw is, oh, well, then that other team's no good. But LSU still brings a ton of talent. So it's a tremendous win for Florida State in the ACC. Let's see, this past week, of course, North Carolina's off to a nice start, even though they've run into some interesting scheduling for North Carolina, going on the road to App State and Georgia State back-to-back weeks. Duke going to Northwestern. That's a nice win. They were double-digit underdog in that game. So, yeah, the conference is giving us a mixed bag. Yeah, Louisville on the road at UCF, nice win, but a number of issues the first week.
Yeah, and then looking at the games this week, first game will be a conference matchup between Florida State and Louisville. Florida State, I think if they beat Louisville, they could be not like, you know, a playoff contender or anything, but maybe like a team that could seriously go like 9-3 this year if they can win the game in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Wake hosts Liberty. Wake. I'm a Wake fan personally, and I don't.
Nice.
That game being too close. That Liberty team, their offense is just not the same that it was without Malik Willis.
Jimmy, do you know any other Wake fans?
Not that are on your channel often. No.
How did you become a Wake fan?
My father, he went to Wake. My sister also goes to Wake.
Okay. You know, anytime I hear
I live in the area.
You know, we've got some Oregon State fans here. We've got a couple Wake fans. I know that we've had some in the past beside you. Anytime I hear people that like those level teams, I just would love them to bring more people on here. I love fans of schools that aren't supposed to win, because I just think that for you to be a college football fan, you don't have this mentality that, okay, well, I'm only going to be satisfied if we win the national championship this year. So I very much admire Purdue fans, Wake Forest fans, Kansas State fans, etc.
Yeah. Unfortunately for you, there's not going to be a lot of Wake fans here, because you got to ask Kirk Herbstreit. There are just 6 of us. So there's not going to be too many that are going to come visit your channel, because he said last year on game day, there's just 6 fans. And I think he would know. I trust Kirk Herbstreit.
He would know. He's covered a lot of Wake games. He does a lot of Wake games that he's assigned to. And so how does that work when you've got a decent ACC game against like an NC State and there's like 40,000, 45,000 people at the game, that there's 6 Wake fans and everybody else?
I guess anyone else who shows up in Wake gear, they might be paid actors. I'm just not sure.
Okay.
Maybe Wake's paying people to show up otherwise.
All right. Well, we'll have to look into that. Maybe I'll do a video on that.
But looking through the other ACC games, Clemson, Louisiana Tech, that's not going to be a close game. Virginia Tech, you'd have to hope they can beat Wofford, even though obviously they are not the best looking team right now. Syracuse-Purdue is a very interesting game to me because this Syracuse team, that Louisville win, looks pretty good right now. And
Oh yeah,
playing a pretty decent Big Ten team. Purdue's
that's
obviously
a nice game right there. I love that matchup, Syracuse-Purdue. Love it.
And then Virginia getting the same team that Virginia Tech couldn't beat, Old Dominion. And coming off that game where they just, I don't know what happened to Virginia's offense. They couldn't score against Illinois.
I was the most surprised at that score. Brendan Armstrong threw for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards against the same team. Obviously not exactly the same team, but the same team last year. And Virginia's offense with those receivers and that quarterback did not get into the end zone. Wow.
Georgia Tech hosting Ole Miss, that's a big opportunity. I don't think they can win that game, but maybe they can keep it close. And, you know, crazier things have already happened this year in college football, obviously.
I'm sorry I missed that. Who don't you think can win?
Georgia Tech hosting Ole Miss. I don't think Tech can win that
not.
game, probably, but you know, Appalachian State's already won at Texas A&M, things like that. So
Sure.
Duke is probably going to start 3-0, hosting NC A&T this week.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that game, actually. They've sold all the tickets out for that game, which is surprising.
Nice.
Duke has not had high attendance, obviously, for the past few years.
Love
So I was
that.
surprised by that. NC State hosts Texas Tech. Obviously, NC State did not look very good in week 1. See how they look against a Power 5 team this week. Pitt, they have to play that game at Western Michigan this year. Hope they don't fall victim to the same team they did last year.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
And then Boston College hosting Maine. I don't see how that's going to be a close game. I can't say I know a lot about Maine's football team, but and then obviously the big game I think for the ACC this week, Miami at Texas A&M.
Did you bring up the NC State Texas Tech game? Did I?
Yeah, that seems after NC State struggles in week 1 against ECU, you've got to think NC State's got to show something in that game. They've got to win at least somewhat convincingly.
Yeah, Texas Tech's not bad though. You know, they're coming off a win against Houston.
Yeah, not going to be an easy game. I think that Texas Tech team. I wonder if obviously the AP poll is not you or I's favorite thing. I wonder if Texas Tech's getting votes in that. I imagine they are. Let's see. Not too many, just 17 votes. I guess if they win this week, they'll probably end up ranked. But yeah, that should be an interesting game. And then the last one, obviously, the Miami at Texas A&M game. You got to think if Appalachian State can go beat Texas A&M, you'd think that Miami could probably stop their offense in a similar way and play a good game. But obviously, Texas A&M probably more fired up for this game than they were last week.
Yeah, so when it comes right down to it, how many Power 5 matchups are we looking at? About 5. And then
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, maybe 5 Power 5 matchups and a couple that are interesting group of 5 games like the Virginia Old Dominion. So it's going to tell us a lot more about the ACC this week, that's for sure.
Yeah, 4 out of conference Power 5 matchups and 1 in conference Power 5 matchup.
Okay.
So, and I think those are all against different, 2 SEC games. Wait. Yeah, 2 SEC games, a Big 10 and a Big 12 opponent.
Okay.
So the chance to, the 3 conferences that I think most people would argue are above the ACC so far, a chance to get wins against all decent opponents in those conferences. None of the bottom teams in any of those conferences.
Yeah, so you got to think that NC State should win. They should win that game 80% of the time against Texas Tech, and that's not a great win for the ACC. They're expected to win, but it's a good win. Texas Tech's no joke. They just beat Houston. The Miami-Texas A&M game is an interesting one because, of course, Texas A&M during the offseason was a decided favorite. Now it's still 6 points, but obviously we saw Texas A&M's offense last week, and Miami's got Tyler Van Dyke going in there, and I don't think anybody's going to be shocked if they win that game. So that would be a huge game, of course, for the ACC to win. Purdue, Syracuse, I consider that kind of a toss-up. I think Purdue, at this point, I think they're slightly better, but they're playing on the road. Syracuse obviously did what they did a couple of weeks ago, and then put up almost 50 points last week. And then, yeah, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, that would be the one that would take me off guard. I would be completely shocked. But, man, if Georgia Tech would pull that off, that would really be a high point for the ACC. So maybe they can go 3-1 in those games.
Yeah, it's I think a decisive week for sort of the early indication of whether we're going to see what we all thought the preseason, or if they really are all the conferences are going to be this tightly packed together, and we're sort of come time for the committee to evaluate the teams at the end of the year. What four will they pick between, maybe I don't know if I can see Alabama going undefeated at this point, but just say a 12-0 Alabama team that loses the SEC championship, or a 12-1 ACC champion or something like that. Who would they pick? And I think games like these this week could help the ACC earn themselves a playoff bid if they can have a team that's just one loss and a conference champion.
Yep, that's why we've got these non-conference games to try to compare not only the conferences, which I'm most interested in, but obviously to make those comparisons between the teams that are vying for the playoff.
I know you've done some, I think, scheduling stuff in the past. I think a lot of college football fans would say, well, it would make sense if we could put some non-conference games more throughout the season than all at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And then you're evaluating the best teams at the end of the season when they haven't played anyone. Most of them haven't played anyone not from their conference in 2 months. But that just makes too much sense.
Yeah, it makes too much sense. And also just taking the scheduling aspect out of the school's hands and putting it in a formula. I would have a formula that a committee would review. And I'm not going to go through the whole system right now, but I would have a formula that a committee would just review to make sure that it's in context, equitable. And, Baylor not playing anyone. I know they played BYU the last 2 years. That's the first team with a pulse that they've scheduled in forever. They haven't played. Was BYU ranked last week? I don't think so.
Yeah, they were 21st.
Okay, they were 21st. So that would be Baylor's first ranked non-conference opponent since 1997. So they went 25 years without playing a ranked team non-conference. And then you'll have USC go out and schedule Alabama and Notre Dame in the same non-conference season. So it makes no sense. There needs to be equity so we can compare these teams more accurately.
And us pivoting a little bit here, I wonder this week, obviously I think it's just one ranked matchup in all of college football. Obviously there are several good games, I know your opinion on rankings, but there's two ranked matchups because Oregon is still in the top 25 for some reason. So there's two ranked matchups this week, but I wonder if you think a lot of teams who have, quote unquote inferior opponents could slip up with a lot more big games coming up next week compared to this week.
Well, Jimmy, first and foremost, I'm not going to scold you for bringing up the rankings. They are, especially the later we get into the season, we get to a point where they are valid. It's not like a team can finish number 5 in the country and not be a really, really good team. So they are valid to a certain extent. I just think that they're out of whack in terms of comparisons and so forth. But anyway, so we're looking for a big upset.
Maybe just not Clemson, who has Wake next week, but Clemson plays Louisiana Tech. I don't know who Florida and Tennessee play, but I know they match up next week. Arkansas, I don't know who they play this week, but they have to go to A&M next week.
None of these teams play anyone.
Yeah, I don't.
No.
USC, I don't know if they play anyone this week. They have a pretty.
They've got Fresno State.
And they have the game at Oregon State next week, so I don't know if they necessarily overlook Fresno State to Oregon State, but that's two tough matchups for them back-to-back that they can kind of prove that they are a team vying for the playoffs.
Yeah, it's funny because every week we go through this exercise, or typically we do, to say, okay, where are the upsets this week? And it's tough to pick them out. And then we just came off a Marshall 20-point underdog, App State 19-point underdog, Washington State 17-point underdog, Georgia Southern 23-point dog. There's 4 huge underdogs that won last week. So we're going to get 1 or 2. That's a little high. That's way over the quota, but we should get 1 or 2 this week. You know what game I think is a bit of a pitfall, possibly? Texas, coming off of the Alabama effort, hosts Texas San Antonio.
That was an 11-1 team last year in the regular season, right? So that is a good team. They I think they just barely fell to Houston, was it, this past week?
Yes, that was week 1, and then they barely lost to Houston overtime game. Then they beat Army by a field goal.
Yeah, Army is. I don't know why anyone willingly schedules Army, including my Wake Forest team included.
I don't get that either. You've
know
ruined your defense you've wasted them for at least a week.
Yeah, you need a bye week before and or after just to play Army.
I'm eyeing that one. And how about Nevada and Iowa?
That Iowa team can't score.
Although Nevada's not as good. You know what? I'll back up on that one just because Nevada's not as good as they usually are.
Who is Iowa going to play this year that they're going to put up double-digit points against? Is there like a team that you can pick out in their schedule?
This week. They better do it this week.
Yeah, I guess Nevada's not the same Group of 5 team they've been.
No, they're really bad this year.
They only play Big Ten teams from here, so.
SMU and Maryland. I don't know that Maryland's a substantial favorite, but they're supposed to win. And that may not be the easiest game.
And then maybe just some of the higher ranked teams. Georgia, obviously they struggled in South Carolina. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's no looking ahead because they have Kent State next week.
Yeah.
So I can't see them necessarily overlooking that team. And Georgia is the only team in the country, I think, who people have. Obviously, they played Oregon, and then they didn't play anyone great last week. And I don't think their offense looked great against, was it Sam Houston State?
Yeah.
But they're the only team I think anyone has thinks has looked really like the number 1 team in the country so far.
Yeah. Well, the obvious one, Jimmy, is Oklahoma, Nebraska.
Yeah. Oklahoma, that's what I've thought, because, you think a team just fired their coach. Maybe they give up on it's either they give up on the season or they start playing better. It's usually one of the two.
Yeah, my theory in this one, and I'm no psychologist, it's just a guess. Mickey Joseph's a motivator. Mickey Joseph is a great recruiter because he connects with kids. This team has had this whole Scott Frost thing hanging over its head, not just this season. This has been going on for a year and a half or 2 years where he's been on the hot seat. They may just, reset us against the world. They've only lost 1 game in the Big Ten. They're not out of it.
And they have talent.
And they have some talent. Yeah, and they may just think of it as, this is a reset. We've got nothing to lose. Let's go.
And the coach, certainly. He's got nothing to lose. He's got a chance at a job, and he's got nothing guaranteed. And Oklahoma they have Kansas State next week at home, but that's a team that's been a thorn in their side for half a decade at this point. I think that game seems to always be close one way or another.
Yeah.
And then BYU, I don't know about this Oregon team because they look so bad. I just don't know if Bo Nix is a Power 5 quarterback. I don't know how you can. I get Georgia's defense is so good, but how can you just lose the game in basically the first half because you can't move the ball at all?
Yeah.
After a team, obviously Georgia can reload on defense with all the talent they recruit, but they lost half of their defense got drafted or something like that. And you just can't move the ball once in like the entire first half, and you're out of the game immediately.
Yeah.
So can they give even BYU a competitive game?
You know what? I only believe I've got one other upset possibility. among not necessarily a top team now, but a perceived top team going into the season. How about Cal at Notre Dame?
Is it even an upset at this point? I mean, I get obviously that Notre Dame is favored because Cal has been, not great either. They haven't played anyone, but that Notre Dame team, they couldn't score against Marshall. Can they score against California?
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. Cal's played no one, but 10.5-point spread, I believe, is the number on that game. All right, Jimmy. Anything else?
Just maybe a bit of a funny comment here. Talking about Notre Dame, I wonder what would happen if Notre Dame played Iowa this year. Just would they score any points in regulation the whole game?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what to make of that. Iowa has a better chance of scoring when their defense is on the field than their offense.
And I guess talking about Notre Dame, they will play at UNC next week, and
Yeah,
an awful UNC defense,
yeah,
but a really, really good UNC offense. Is Notre Dame going to be able to put up points or stop the UNC defense?
yeah. And UNC, shoot, I'm thinking that most of the chat probably believes UNC's the better team at this point, and they've struggled with App State, which again, then we can parlay the App State effort against Texas A&M. I get it. So that UNC game looks better now. But then Georgia State, they really struggled in that game too. So they've not been on fire themselves collectively. The offense has, but Notre Dame, yeah, UNC. That's going to be interesting to see what kind of game, what kind of scoring, and what kind of game that turns into.
That UNC team makes me think a lot of my Wake Forest team last year.
Yeah,
your defense is keeping your opponent in games, and your offense is scoring tons of points, although they didn't necessarily do that as much so against Georgia State, but their defense just keeping their opponents in games all the way into the fourth quarter, even if they should be beating them. And if Florida A&M wasn't, missing half their offense, who knows if that game would have been closer too. I think that's it for me, Mark. I'll be calling you next week to talk about probably Wake and Clemson, as long as my Wake team doesn't slip up this week. That should be hopefully an exciting game, and hoping for game day, but them going to Boone this week, I don't know if that's as likely.
Gotcha, Jimmy. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good.
We got Jake on the line. Let's get to Jake here at the Voice of College Football. Jake, how you doing?
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
I'm good. What's going on?
Good. I was wondering, which matchup are you looking forward to the most this weekend?
Okay. Give me 2 seconds because I'm dropping the link back into the chat. Everybody, please join the show. We've got the link in the chat. All right. I'm going with this because this was part of the show topic. My under the radar games. Let's start there. Kansas, Houston. Interesting little matchup there. Houston's played in overtime against Texas Tech and Texas San Antonio, and Kansas, of course, coming off a big win against West Virginia in overtime, and a possible upset special, Texas San Antonio, Texas. And a few honorable mentions here. Michigan State, Washington, Purdue, Syracuse, Fresno State, USC. But here's my top 5, Jake.
Okay.
At number 5, I've got Mississippi State at LSU. At 4, I've got Oklahoma at Nebraska. At 3, BYU at Oregon. My game number 2, Penn State at Auburn. And my most anticipated game of the week is Miami at Texas A&M.
Okay. Yeah. Isn't it – you would have never thought that Mississippi State would be favored on the road at LSU.
Yeah.
In a million years. Yeah. That's just kind of crazy. But
I think it's pretty justified at this point.
Yeah, I mean, no, it is justified because Mississippi State is a really good team. They have a lot of talent, a a lot of underrated talent. But I'm just saying, like, in the scope of just,
Sure.
you wouldn't think that LSU would be in this position, years ago. You wouldn't think that Mississippi State would be favored going into an LSU game in Baton Rouge,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a close game, interesting game. LSU's obviously got their work cut out for them against the very efficient Will Rogers and Mike Leach's air raid. The number that sticks in my head from watching this game was Will Rogers 36 of 39 against Kentucky last year. And Kentucky had a really good defense. They play pitch and catch, and they know what spots they're going to be in, and they've got a controlled air raid attack that's all about execution, and it's impressive. So then you got Jaden Daniels, and if Mississippi State can not do what Florida State's really only issue on defense in game one was not keeping Jaden Daniels in the pocket and letting him get loose. But otherwise, LSU has a few offensive issues and challenges themselves, but they do have John Emery back this week.
Yeah. And you mentioned the A&M and Miami game as your number one, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Honestly, though, I think that Miami's kind of in a rough spot as far as like maybe like perception or what. Because honestly, if A&M wins, or no, if A&M loses, if Miami beats A&M, well, people are just gonna say like, well, yeah, A&M's trash, But if A&M wins, and obviously, oh well, A&M was, they've gotten things together. Maybe, they're back on track a little bit. Appalachian State was just a really rough day for them.
I hear you, Jake. Well, anything you're looking for out of me on that? I think that Miami's better at the quarterback position. Jimbo Fisher's apparently splitting reps between two quarterbacks, Haynes King and Max Johnson this week, so we don't know which direction he's going to go. I do think that if Haynes King gets the start, that he's got a short leash, that we could see Max Johnson pretty quickly if the offense continues to struggle. I think Texas A&M's got I don't think there's any question, a more talented roster top to bottom. But, of course, there are issues with A&M. And I watched that game against Appalachian State, and just to watch it was painful. They didn't score 14 points. The offense scored 7 points, 1 touchdown. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown. They scored that touchdown with 11 minutes left in the first quarter and never touched the end zone again. So,
yeah.
So,
now
anything else, sir?
Okay, with this Penn State and Auburn game, do you think? Okay, so I feel like if Penn State wins this game, they could probably end up having like a pretty good season. But I feel like Auburn, if they win this game, they probably still can't have a good season. What do you think?
Well, I understand what you're saying there, that you just think that Auburn's got too difficult of a road in the SEC, and Penn State's already cleared a big hurdle with a road game at Purdue. So they've already notched a big Big Ten game, probably the 4th or 5th best team that they're going to see on their schedule. So they've already won that game. Now they go to Auburn, and, technically speaking, it has nothing to do with the conference standings for either one of them. So they can both bounce back and then go into their conferences. But psychologically, Yeah, I don't want to overstate or overplay what it could mean for either team psychologically. I think these athletes are resilient. I just think we've seen a zillion examples of teams that have lost non-conference games. That's why somebody called earlier and said Wisconsin's no good and they're not a factor and they're not going to compete in the conference. And I'm trying to figure out, I understand they just lost a game. That's not a good indication. They may not be as good as they typically are, but there's a million examples of teams, including Wisconsin, that have lost non-conference games early in the season and still been a factor in their conference.
Yeah. Has there been a team? No, I'm not like discrediting your point or anything, but I'm just kind of wondering if there's been a team in the college football playoff era that has lost a game, like a non-conference matchup early in the season, and then maybe went on to the playoff.
Ohio State, Virginia Tech, 2014.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. Wow, yeah.
So there's one. So of course, that Virginia Tech team only finished 7-6. 2015, not non-conference. 2016. Those were all conference losses. 2017. Clemson certainly could have lost to a number of teams, but
Oh yeah.
They lost to Syracuse when they made the playoff one year. They lost to Pitt. They almost lost to who was that? Troy. They beat by 1 point. NC State missed a field goal right before overtime that would have beaten them in 2016. 2018 Oklahoma, they had Army take them to overtime.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
So, yeah, and they also had, even though your question is non-conference, Oklahoma State dropped a 2-point conversion that would have beaten Oklahoma that year and knocked them out of the playoff. 2020, there were no non-conference games, and then last season, of course, we didn't have any non-conference losses. So, yeah, not a whole lot to go on there. To make it all the way to the
schedule Army.
Yeah.
Did you know that this is pretty interesting? My buddy told me this, that Auburn has never played, a Big Ten team has never played in Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That does not surprise me. Yeah.
It surprised me. I mean,
the two conferences don't get together very often. Not as nearly as often as they should.
Yeah, I would. Oh man, you're giving me ideas. I'm just thinking about Alabama and Ohio State home and home series.
Well, they've got a home and home series in about 6 or 7 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's see here. Maybe a little later than that. Uh, 2027 and 28, so only 5 years from now.
Yeah. Do you know if Michigan or Georgia have anything planned, like SEC or Big Ten?
Ohio State and Georgia have a series too.
Oh wait, when is that?
That's a little later, I believe. Ohio State and Georgia. Wow. 2030 and 31.
Wow. You could say right now it sounds like a good game, but those programs are always, pretty stable. So you've got to imagine
exactly
that, that's good. Still. you
Yeah,
would expect that to be a really good game against
when
top.
when people
10
make the
programs.
comment that we schedule these games 12 years in advance, which I'm totally against, but anyway, we schedule these games 12 years in advance and nobody knows how good somebody's going to be in 12 or 13. Well, yes and no. When you're scheduling Kansas State or Louisville or Virginia Tech, yeah, you're taking a guess.
Or Auburn and Oregon, you just have no clue.
But if you're scheduling Ohio State in 5 years, there's a 98% chance.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if Georgia and Ohio State weren't like top 10 programs still like 10 years from now. So.
Michigan has Texas in 2024, Oklahoma in 25 and 26, Texas in 27.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I've got a bold prediction here.
Okay.
Texas loses this weekend.
Okay. Yeah, I brought that one up earlier as an under the radar upset selection. Yes, I'm on board for that.
Yeah, and it's not because I think they're a bad team. I just think last week was their Super Bowl.
Yep,
Emotions.
I can see it.
Yeah, which, will it completely make their season just kind of fall off a cliff?
Sure.
I don't know. You've got to imagine that, Sarkisian talks about, how much being under Nick Saban has helped him as a coach, discipline-wise, kind of get himself together.
Yeah, we'll see. Because Saban does not allow that. Well, Jake, I appreciate you being here. Call back anytime.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the football. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Before we get to our next call, let's run through the poll question from today. I should do this more often because we did get a nice little response of, 815 folks on this one. Your week 3 game of choice, or if you only got to see one game this week, Miami, Texas A&M at 37%, followed by Penn State, Auburn, Oklahoma, Nebraska, BYU, Oregon, Mississippi State, LSU. Let's look at the comments section. What write-ins do we get? We get Michigan State, Washington. We've got Oregon State, Montana State. All righty. Hey, it's your game of choice. Georgia, South Carolina. Vanderbilt, Northern Illinois, out of Vandy Dandy. We would expect no less. Vandy Dandy, you're a trooper for watching that football team every game, every year for who knows how many years. Michigan State, Washington, NC State, Texas Tech. I named that as a pretty interesting game. App State and Troy. Florida State, Louisville playing on a Friday night ACC opener for FSU. Michigan, UConn, of course. Yes. And there you go. All right, let's get back to it. We got the real MVP on the line. Hello, sir.
Hello, Mark. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Well, the game I chose for your poll question, I chose BYU versus Oregon.
Yep.
And I want to see a close game. So that eliminates Oklahoma and Nebraska most likely. I want to see a game that can change the way conferences are perceived. And I don't think Miami, Texas, Penn State, Auburn, or Mississippi LSU do that. So I would go with BYU versus Oregon. I think a very underlying story that nobody's talked about is BYU. Could they have maybe the clearest path to the playoffs if they beat Oregon?
You love BYU. Week? You loved talking BYU this year.
Hey, listen, man, I think they're a dark horse to make the playoffs. A realistic dark horse. And it would be fun to see a new team in there.
Oh, it'd be great. Sign me up for BYU in the playoffs. That would be phenomenal. I don't know that it would be the best game in the world. Georgia 49, BYU 13, but, fine. So they cleared the first hurdle. Yes, Baylor in shaky fashion, but they got past that. Of course, now even more so than all the teams that we talk about when we talk about playoff possibilities, needing the teams that they beat to go out and play well. Ohio State doesn't need that. It's not. People are going to take shots if Notre Dame goes 5-7. That Ohio State's win doesn't mean anything. But Ohio State, they take care of their own business. Georgia takes care of its own business. Clemson, those teams can. They don't need anybody else. But BYU need, Baylor. If Baylor wins the Big 12, wow, makes the championship game, has a 10-2 season. That's a nice
I'm
win.
looking at not Notre Dame. I'm looking at BYU's schedule.
Yes.
And I could see the best Pac 12 team they beat, the best Pac 12 team, the third best SEC team.
Oh, the best Pac-12 team. You're thinking Oregon's going to be able to pull that off?
Could be.
Okay. Keep going.
The third best SEC team.
Yeah.
They play Notre Dame, a respectable program.
Yeah, let's say Notre Dame. I still think Notre Dame's a good team. Let's say they go 8-4 this year.
Yeah, I don't want to expect. I'm not expecting 10-2 anymore, or even 9-3. But
yeah, well, if they lose to BYU as well, maybe it's 7-5 for Notre Dame because USC, Clemson. But anyway, yeah,
it's a respectable enough game, and you get those collections of teams, and then I see what Cincinnati was able to do last year. I think BYU's just got as good a shot as anybody.
Well, they definitely have a better schedule than Cincinnati, but they don't have as good a schedule as your typical Power 5 team.
Well, I understand that BYU is going to need some help, but my counter to that would be Marshall helped out. App State helped out. So some of the dominoes have already fallen.
Yeah.
For BYU, and I expect many more dominoes will fall in BYU's favor.
You do believe, because I think you stated this to me, that you believe Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State are the three best teams in the country.
I said at the beginning of the season that's the case. I'm not sure now.
Okay. All right.
I think Georgia is a clear one. And then after that, I'm not sure.
All right. Okay. Who do you think could be as good as Ohio State and Alabama?
Oh, okay. Well, who do I think could beat them on any given weekend, or who do you think 3 weeks of preparation? Because those are two separate questions.
Well, more important is going to be, since we already know what the schedules are, is going to be 3 weeks of preparation.
Well, I think Clemson could do it.
Well, sure. Okay. Yeah.
I think USC could do it.
Okay.
And outside of those two teams, I'm not really sure, but I think the schedule that Alabama plays might not set them up for even them to make the playoffs. So if they continue to play the way they did against Texas. Now, if they turn it around and stuff, then I think they'll be fine. But I'm looking at that game against Arkansas they have in a few weeks, and Arkansas is a really good, scrappy team and well coached. I think Alabama has a good shot to lose that game by Alabama standards.
This would all be so much more fun if Alabama would have lost that game against Texas, and they should have lost that game. This would be so much more fun and intriguing right now.
Oh, absolutely. But you can't tell me that your perception of Alabama and Ohio State have taken a notch or two down based on what the teams they've played have done and what they've looked like on the field themselves.
My opinion of Ohio State's unchanged. If anything, I think they're better on defense than I thought they would be.
Well, based on the way
I
Marshall looked
understand
against
Notre Dame's no good, or people think they're no good.
I was going to their offense. Marshall's offense looked better than Ohio State's offense against the same team.
Yeah, the Notre Dame did not play Marshall the way they played Ohio State. If there was a way that we could calculate and we could roll out these teams every week and give them the same amount of energy, focus, fervor, fire that they would play with every week. Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame thought about, prepared for Ohio State the entire offseason.
Well, we unfortunately, Mark, we can't do that because of
Then they
scheduling.
played Marshall.
And these are human beings.
And all credit to Marshall, but Marshall did not get the Notre Dame team that played Ohio State the week before. But that's not their fault. They still pulled off an impressive upset, and it counts just as much and all that. But I'm just telling you, these teams don't come out the same every week. And if you're Ohio State or Alabama, you get a different team in front of you. And so we still have to see a little bit more on Texas. That was great. That was impressive, especially with the quarterback situation. I came away from that game more impressed with Texas than Alabama. I thought they were
if
better.
You want to, why don't we just throw Texas into the playoff discussion as well? They'd be new team.
Yeah. Sure, they're in the playoff discussion. They almost most likely need to run the table now.
Well, I would assume so, but if there was a 2-loss team that would get in, one of those losses being that Alabama would probably be the team that would be the first to be at 2 losses to get in.
Yeah, especially when people consider watching the game and Ewers gets knocked out in the first quarter and Hudson Card's limping around on a bad ankle, and they're still, I'll just flat out say it, they were better than Alabama Saturday. They just were, but they didn't win the game. But I also think Bryce Young was down in the end zone when he flipped the ball up in the air, and that should have been a safety.
Yeah, and
how did the officials? This guy didn't get enough play from this angle. They're reviewing targeting. They're reviewing a personal foul late hit, and they don't notice that he's down when he's throwing the ball. And there should also be judgment given to the rule of a safety if the quarterback is clearly intentionally grounding the ball and he hits an opposing player on the helmet. That's just insane. It's just a dumb lack of, I don't want to call it a dumb rule. It's a dumb absence of a rule is what it is.
I would agree with you. And maybe I'm literally the only college football fan on earth, but my perception of Alabama has slightly changed a little bit.
Oh, mine has too.
And I'm looking at these, teams that Alabama should blow out, like LSU, Texas A&M now and stuff. And I'm thinking one, 2, or 3 times this season, they'll be in a 1-possession game. And they may pull all of them out because they got the greatest coach and they probably have the best quarterback in college football.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still not sold on Alabama's wide receivers, their offensive line.
Yeah.
So, and I just don't know how many times you can be in a 1-possession game and not lose one. Because the math says eventually, if you're in a 1-possession game every single week, you're going to lose one. You can't win them all.
Hopefully the coaches they play will actually make the right decisions. Well, I'm being a little harsh on Brian Harsin because it was Tank Bigsby who ran the ball out of bounds when he shouldn't have. Otherwise, Alabama loses that game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, yeah, it takes a little luck to get to the national championship game sometimes.
I understand that. It takes a little bit of luck, but usually Alabama is the team you can just kind of expect to be there. They're going to roll their schedule. It's shocking when Alabama loses a game. I'm not going to be shocked this year if Alabama loses a game. I'm just not.
Oh, I'm not going to be either. I'm also not going to be shocked if they win every game the rest of the season and win the national championship.
I might be with Georgia. If they beat Georgia twice, I would be shocked if they beat Georgia twice, just because of how dominant Georgia has looked.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's almost impossible for Georgia to have played any better against Oregon, but I guess the best team Georgia's going to see is your Kentucky Wildcats.
Oh, that's a very high compliment, Mark. And you brought them up, so I've got to ask you a question about them. I'm looking at the schedule. Ole Miss, I think, is 50-50. Mississippi State's probably 50-50. Tennessee 50-50. Georgia probably 20%. If Kentucky wins all the 50-50 games and all the games they should, they'll be 11-1. Is possible 11-1 Kentucky team makes the college football playoff?
Sure. They're in the SEC.
And what is the SEC still the best conference?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Well, I would love to have that debate, but it doesn't make any sense to have it. The SEC is the best conference. Although the SEC's results aren't overwhelming, but it's the best conference. Who else has beaten? What conference has beaten Cincinnati, Texas? Who else do we have?
South Carolina.
Well, they beat themselves. They beat another team in the conference. So I don't really. Utah.
Oregon.
Dare I say it? Arizona, Oregon. So the best teams from top to bottom, I guess the best win at this point is probably still Utah. It's probably Utah, Cincinnati, Oregon, Texas. Well, who knows? Texas might be. So anyway, those are 4 wins. I don't know that. Yeah, no other conference can touch those. And Pitt, no conference can touch those 5 wins.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if Oregon wins and Washington wins, okay, and the Pac-12 does what they're supposed to do, is there going to be heavily consideration to moving them up above the ACC?
Yeah, I thought about it last week. It's still funny because our standard is so low for the Pac-12. The Pac-12 has been so atrocious, so horrible. I jumped into the Pac-12 show for a few minutes last night, and Tim's going to jump on me here in a few minutes. He's like 2 calls behind you. I jumped in because you got your Pac-12 homers on there, and I love the show. It's amazing. These guys are amazing. And even though I throw them a bunch of praise, they're going to get stung by my one comment about how bad the Pac-12 is. And it's just been I just had to, bring them back to center, bring a little rationale into their life and throw out the 3-16 last year and, 0 for whatever 2 years in bowl games, et cetera, that when the Pac-12 plays as well as it did the last 2 weeks, I was impressed with the Pac-12. Now, when I objectively looked at it, I'm like, well, okay, take the perception out of it, take the bias out of it. Just look at how they're playing. They still have the most losses non-conference than anybody. And, by a few games, they're still 16-6 when the Big Ten's like 21-4, and the SEC is 21-4, and the ACC and the Big 12 still have much better records. They're still losing games outside the conference, but at least they've won a couple games, but they're still 1-5 against the Power 5 this year. So it's not, they're just so much better, but it's still, they're being so much better and outplaying what I expected has brought them from they're the worst for sure to they're still probably the worst, but you can make an argument that they could catch the ACC.
Oh, yeah, and especially if the ACC keeps losing to teams like Old Dominion.
Yeah.
I mean, if Old Dominion beats both teams in the state of Virginia and the ACC, that's a pretty bad look.
Yes.
That's got to matter. Oh,
And
and BC,
it was a bad week for the Big Ten. I have to be fair, and I stated that. And I actually ranked the Big 12 above the Big 10 this week. I don't think it's better, but I think they're playing better. They had better results. And that's because Wisconsin, Iowa, Northwestern, and, well, Nebraska. they're a given. But the other three lost big non-conference games.
oh yeah, but I got to give the Pac-12 some credit, a little bit of credit. Those losses they had, some of them were against quality SEC teams. So
Sure. Yeah.
you got to take into context who they lost to.
And aside from Oregon, and that's a rough one, they're playing the best team in the country. But, you just can't lose. You just have to show up and lose by 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, not a million points. And again, it's all trying to figure out, okay, how good are they? How good are they? And Florida is going to show us how good they are. And we saw Utah lose in the Swamp. So is Florida a really good 9-3 team? Or are they more like 6-6?
Oh yeah, and that'll matter more toward the end of the year. But I mean, the Pac-12, I got to give them props. And all we said, all I was thinking all off season is you got to go out. If you want some respect, you've got to beat some quality teams. And I know they haven't beaten a lot of Power 5 teams, but the group of 5 teams they've been beating up aren't cupcake group of 5 teams.
No.
So I got to give them some respect. I think some of the group of 5 teams they've beaten is better than some Power 5 teams.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Does that equate into your factor of the ranking?
Oh, well, absolutely. Yeah, it's not just, okay, you're a Power 5. No. The Arkansas beating Cincinnati's a better win than somebody beating, fill in the blank, Colorado, for sure. Yeah, there's a pretty large overlap between, it's not more than half for sure, but it's, your top 10 or 12 group of 5 teams are safely in that mid-range, that 5th place, 6th place in the Big Ten or another conference, or maybe a little bit better than, you got some outliers. Cincinnati last year obviously was a complete outlier, and Houston's been an outlier in the past, and UCF. But I mean, like a collection of teams, San Diego State, Fresno State, they're good teams that would win some games in the Big Ten or another Power 5 conference.
Yeah, and outside of probably Colorado, the bottom of the Pac-12 isn't putrid. Arizona looks competitive. Arizona State has looked competitive, and won good against good football team or decent football teams. Where in years past, I don't think they would have been able to do that. But you've got the schedule up there. I mean, Washington versus Michigan State, that's a big one. Utah, San Diego State, USC, Fresno State. Those are 3 quality wins.
Yeah, if they can go out this week, and obviously if they win them all, holy smokes. But let's be reasonable. The BYU-Oregon game is a big game. Michigan State-Washington is a big game. And really, those are the 2. If they could split those. And then USC beating Fresno State. Now, USC can't lose because then that's a bad loss. But if they win that game, they should also get some credit. But USC is in a tough place in the Pac-12 there because you can't lose that game, and you're going to get marginal credit for it. But I personally will give the Pac-12 substantial credit for winning that game. Colorado, write them off. They suck. They're horrible. Cal, whatever. That's a bonus if they beat Notre Dame. But shoot, maybe they can. And then just hold serve against the rest of those. Don't do what the Pac-12 has done in the past and lose to whomever on that list, North Dakota State and Montana State, and lose a couple of those games. It should
Yeah,
be a
I
good
would
week for the Pac-12.
Oh
But-
yeah, I would agree with everything you basically said there. The only thing I would kind of disagree is North Dakota State. North Dakota State is a really, really, really good FCS team.
Well, sure they are. Yes, absolutely they are.
For Arizona, where they were just last year, if they even win by 3 points or lose by 3 points, I think that's good enough for Arizona. I'm actually more concerned about that Arizona State Eastern Michigan game as a potential loss for the Pac-12 because I think currently Arizona State's just in a worse place as a program.
Yeah, that's a good call. That could happen. It's possible. Sure.
Yeah, and
But I think everyone understands that every conference has a couple really bad teams that are going to lose to Group of 5 teams, possibly.
yeah, I would agree with that. The final thing I'll say is, Mark, which Power 5 program is the worst?
The worst team is Colorado. The worst program is probably Colorado as well, with Lance Leopold doing what he's doing at Kansas. Shoot, they just beat West Virginia. They played close games down the stretch last season. And really, nobody in the Big Ten's that awful to the level of Colorado. It doesn't appear. It seems like it's Colorado. Maybe Vandy's still in that hunt.
No love for Boston College as the worst team?
Well, technically speaking, meaning, we still rank based on the, the resume. Yes, if that's the deal. But realistically, no, not Boston College. I would have to see a lot more out of Boston College as a bad football team. But I'm not. I'm staying with Phil Jurkovic and my guy Jeff Hafley.
Man, I just don't know. You get blown out against the team that loses to Old Dominion is not a good look. That is not a good look at all. And then they lost to Rutgers at home. I mean, those are, if you want to pair, those might be the 2 worst Power 5 losses you could have at this moment. That's realistic. That's just putrid. Well, Mark, I know you've got a bunch of calls lining up, so
we do. We're going to start working through them. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being
sorry
here.
if I took up too much of your time.
Oh, you're good. I can always cut you off. Have a good one.
You do the same.
All right, let's keep it moving. We got Will on the line. Will, good to see you.
Mark, people have been taking shots at my team. I mean, deservedly so, but man.
Deservedly so. Yes, you're first of all, you got a target on your back anyway.
Yeah.
You don't play in a conference and you're Notre Dame and you're arrogant. So there you go. But on top of that, you lose to Marshall. So yeah. And I've got nothing to back it up, but I just can't believe that Notre Dame's that bad. I still
we're not that
think
bad.
that they are one of the 25 best teams in the country.
I hope we can go 9-3, but realistically, we're going to go 8-4, 7-5.
Yeah, you are.
Mm-hmm. So I was disappointed I wasn't able to call in during the Scott Frost show.
Yeah, that was a fun one. We had a ton of people here. We had like 1,200 people online.
So the question that I have about the Scott Frost era in Nebraska, is it the worst non-scandal hire that you've seen? Like without, like no George O'Leary, is it the worst?
Petrino, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great question. I love that question. It's got to be the worst non-scandal hire that was expected to be a really good hire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know of anybody. I would love for somebody to dig up some article from 2017 or 18, and it would have been at the end of 17 that he got hired, that somebody forecasted, okay, this is not a good hire because of X, Y, and Z, because everything added up to it being a good hire. So I don't know that anyone criticized that hiring or questioned it in any way.
Was it definitely worse than Rich Rod at Michigan?
There are, with Scott Frost, it's easier to see where he made missteps. It's easier to see his blunders. It's easier to see where he made bad coaching decisions. doesn't have a special teams coach. He makes the onside kick call. I can point to a few late game situations last year that he made questionable decisions. With Rich Rod, I don't think he had those. He stepped into a situation where the roster didn't fit his personnel, and he never really got it turned around. He didn't say, okay, I'm going to have to change my system to fit this personnel, or otherwise I'm in trouble. He just kind of slammed his system into the personnel he had, and it didn't work. But yeah, in terms of the expectations being what they were, Scott Frost would be the slam dunk, but Rich Rod's a good one. The one thing I would say about Rich Rod, though, was Michigan was a better program going into the Rich Rod era than Nebraska is. Lloyd Carr's last season, they beat Tim Tebow in Florida and Urban Meyer in a bowl game and finished roughly in the top 10, 12 in the country. And then Rich Rod, they crashed and burned. So he took over a much better program.
I know Rich Rod, right before he accepted the job, he immediately called Terrell Pryor to try to recruit him away from Ohio State. So if he would have gotten Terrell Pryor, and apparently he didn't get the DC that he wanted either. It was like Castile. I don't know that name, but that's what I heard. Do you know?
What was the second point?
And apparently he didn't get the DC that he wanted.
Oh,
Michigan. I forgot. I was trying to remember the name. I didn't recognize the name when they threw it out there.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I forget all about that because I haven't thought about it for 13 years. But yeah, there is something there. Maybe a Michigan fan can fill us in. That's going to, jog my memory. Yeah, Terrell Pryor. He tried to recruit. Yes, that is true. And you would think that would have changed. Man, this is going to make me sound like a homer. I know it is. I've seen all sorts of lists of the best quarterbacks during the BCS era. And of course, I would never sell Terrell Pryor to be on the level of Cam Newton or Tim Tebow or Vince Young, etc. He's not an all-time great quarterback. But I've seen like really extensive lists that rank like the top 100 BCS era quarterbacks. And he is always ranked way too low. Ohio State barely lost a game when he was there. They won 3 consecutive Big Ten championships. He was the MVP of the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. My son, if I brought my son on here, he could vouch for me that I used to make fun of Terrell Pryor. It took him a long time to win me over because I didn't think he could throw the ball. From the first time I watched him throw a pass at Ohio State, I'm like, what is going on here? Who is this guy? And I understand he's the number 1 quarterback in the country, but he can't throw. Like, what's going on here? But you just had to get used to it. He had this really odd throwing motion that I just drove me nuts, but I learned to appreciate him.
Do you think he was about Matt Barkley level, or would you say that's a bad comparison?
Matt Barkley, well, they're very different quarterbacks.
Yeah,
maybe the level. That's a good comparison in terms of level. I don't know that Matt Barkley didn't accomplish near as much as Terrell Pryor did. But, Matt Barkley was, of course, a really good quarterback who I think most people believe would have been a high NFL draft selection had he come out the year before.
Yeah, he torched us in 2011. That was a heartbreaker. The only other coach I would say, and this is not really on the program, more on the I mean, I guess it is to an extent, but Lane Kiffin at Tennessee is probably the only other like big time program hire that didn't work out, and it was because Lane Kiffin left to go to SC.
Sure.
Yeah.
So big time program hire that hasn't every Tennessee head coach hire not worked out since Phil Fulmer.
Yeah. But I was just listening to a show and they were talking about that, and I thought that would be a fun topic to bring up on The Voice.
Well, it is a good topic. It is a good topic. So I'm not. I guess I'm not getting the connection. Like Tennessee, all their hires are bad.
Yeah, I guess
All Miami's hires are bad. The Mark Richt situation, I make that an exception there because I just don't think, now knowing what's happened to his health, I think there's something going on there that he just was not at his best.
I just didn't understand the Manny Diaz hire from the beginning.
Yeah, that was a horrible hire. I've made this statement on the Miami channel a number of times that post Butch Davis, even though Larry Coker won a national championship,
all he had to do was not mess it up. Don't mess it up, Larry Coker.
Well, if you look at this, is proven. This is the proof that Miami's made bad coaching hire after bad coaching hire. Every coach that they've hired since Butch Davis, which is Larry Coker, Randy Shannon, Al Golden, Manny Diaz. Again, I'm going to take Richt out of the equation. Has never accomplished anything as a head coach before going to Miami or after leaving Miami. So it shows that they've made bad coaching hires because none of those guys have accomplished anything anywhere.
Yeah, well, most convicts aren't that smart, so.
All right, I'm staying out of that one. You can have your war with the Miami folks there, so you go do that.
Do you think there's a bit more parity with the Power 5 now than it is with other years, with the Pac-12 looking better, the Big 12 also having a good start? Do you think there's more parity, or is it just going to return to normal after bowl season? We'll just say SEC's for sure the worst. SEC's by far the best, and then Big 10 second best, and then Pac-12 the worst.
Well, if we stick to the results on the field and only judge that, then maybe we'll have some kind of argument, possibly. You know, if you take all the metrics into consideration about recruiting and NFL draft selections, you know, the SEC is not going to be touched anytime soon or maybe ever. So it depends what your argument is. But if we stick to the results on the field and just judge the teams based on the results on the field, maybe we'll have, you know, if for anyone who's going to be an SEC hater and want to kind of bring them back down to the pack, you know, the Texas win would have been really good.
I want to, but I just can't make that argument.
You want to make the argument, but you can't.
Yeah, because the SEC is so good. The SEC fans are been like a little snobby, and I'm like, oh, I want to argue with them, but I can't really argue with them. Yeah.
You probably heard me say that a million times when people call in and want to say that the Big Ten's the best, let's say, and I'm like, believe me, I would want nothing more, because it would fill up my off season with really good content, to actually have a legitimate breakdown and have a great debate over the best conference, but it's pointless.
I mean, the Big 12 ACC debate's kind of fun, but not as many people are passionate about that.
No. They're pretty much passionate about the SEC versus the Big 10 or the SEC versus the world.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I'm excited for this week. I hope there's some upsets, not including my team, of course. I don't like being upset, but I do enjoy watching other upsets. So it's gonna be hopefully it's as good as last week with my team not losing. But yeah,
I tell you, if we have 4 17+ point upsets again this week, it's going to be crazy, because can you imagine what games are those going to be?
Yeah. Who knows?
So,
well,
all right. Well, anything else?
No, just please check out the Patreon. It's as Jeff says, it's the best $5 you'll ever spend. You have a ton of fun on the Discord, so please check it out. Trust me, it's worth it. And yeah, also use the Amazon link as well. Use the Amazon link. It's not used enough by, I'm sure enough of you people use Amazon. So you don't have to pay any extra money. Just click the link, type in what you want to buy, click buy, and then Mark makes some money, and we can keep building the voice of college football.
Beautiful. Will, between you and J Dub and Exploring with Ben, and you guys are like promotional Geniuses, marketing geniuses.
I'm gonna try to go live tomorrow. I wanted to go live today, but things happen. So, like, check out my channel, Will ND. I only have one video up right now that I did Thursday.
Will launched a channel?
Yeah, I got rated by a popular NFL streamer, so I got like 40 subscribers out of that. So that was fun.
You got rated by them? What the heck does that
Rated?
mean?
They like rated. They just say like raid when they raid my channel.
I have no idea what that means. But anyway, Will MD?
Will ND.
ND, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
I want to try to go live tomorrow, maybe in the afternoon.
If I can find you.
Yeah. It might be hard. I don't know.
Yeah,
I only have like
it's a little
40-something
difficult.
subscribers.
Will and his channel. That's not you. I put in Will ND channel. That usually,
Yeah.
Will, drop a link in the chat. See if you can drum up some business there.
All right, I'll drop it in the private chat, and then hopefully someone can spam it because I'm not a mod. So I'm gonna go your channel. I'm gonna pop it in the private chat, and maybe someone can. Yeah, Jordan's got me. There we go. All right. Well, I'm gonna be fun. I think Tim's up next, so it's always fun to listen to Tim and what he has to say.
Tim has left us. I don't know what happened there. He got sick of waiting, I guess.
Okay. Well,
Will, appreciate you being here.
All right. Well,
glad to hear that you got a YouTube channel. Hope that goes well.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hope that we have another great week of college football, and I'll see you guys next time I call in.
Sounds good, Will. Thanks. All right, let's keep it rolling here. And as Will said, Discord, you get to chat with these knuckleheads all the time, talking college football 24/7, 365. And the more people we get, the more specific you can get with your conversation. Meaning, let's say you're just into Oklahoma. You just love Oklahoma. Sure, we got some Oklahoma fans in there right now, but we got about 90 people in the Discord. We get that to 900, then shoot, we will have an Oklahoma chat room all by itself. So keep that in mind. Please join because, hey, we got another tremendous member of our Discord right here on Patreon, Jordan Bowman.
What's going on, Mark?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing all right. I wanted to call in because I have a bone to pick with certain narratives that have been propagated in the college football media space.
Yeah. Am I included?
No.
Okay.
No. You are not.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're good. There's been a lot of talk about how Clemson in particular has played through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think that no one has gotten more criticism, more undeserved criticism, than the quarterback for Clemson, DJ Uiagalelei.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about just for this season or
just for this season?
Okay.
Just for this season. Keep in mind, I want to clarify, just for this season.
Okay.
Now, last year, yes, the DJ got his due criticism. He did not play well. He was flat out bad for a lot of the year. But I wanted to really examine kind of what how DJ has actually played through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because the narrative about him and what the film and what people who actually understand the sport have actually seen couldn't be further apart. And I think a lot of people have been, people still have that drive, that last drive against Georgia Tech. Well, really, that first, they have two things in their mind when they think about Clemson. They think about that first half against Georgia Tech, where they were very sluggish offensively, and then they have the very last Clemson offensive drive where Cade Klubnik comes in, leads a touchdown drive, and they have just thrown out everything else in between. And I don't even think anybody watched the Furman game except for Clemson fans.
Sure.
but the numbers really tell a different story about DJ's play, especially a lot of the advanced stats. I mean, I don't know what your feelings are on Pro Football Focus. I personally don't care for them a whole lot. I think that there's some value in looking at their numbers and what they do, but when you in putting them in context to what you see on the field. But I don't think people realize that DJ has actually, through 2 weeks has graded out higher than he's ever been, including his freshman year where he had 2 starts against Boston College and Notre Dame. He has according to Pro Football Focus, he has a 90.4 passer rating, passing grade, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe that if I counted right, he is 9th among all quarterbacks in the country right now. And I want, and the reason I bring this up is because when I've watched Clemson through 2 weeks, I've actually been thorough, except for that first half against Georgia. Some of the the plays in that first half against Georgia Tech, really the first quarter. I've been really impressed by DJ's play, especially throwing the ball. I think that he is greatly improved. Going through his progressions, I think he puts a lot more touch on the ball. He's made some really like NFL throws through 2 weeks, and I know the competition hasn't been stiff, but just watching him, if you watch DJ Clemson last year, DJ did not look good against the Sisters of the Poor that they were playing. He was not good against South Carolina State. He wasn't good against UConn. And you watch those games and you're like, wow, he's improved so much. I think the biggest thing is he needs more help from his offensive line and his receivers. I don't think he's some Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he's like Trevor Lawrence or anything. And he's just made like leaps and bounds, and he's elite. So I don't want people to misconstrue that I'm saying that DJ is somehow now an elite quarterback again, and all his problems are fixed. He still has a lot to work on, but I think Clemson can play winning football. Especially considering the way some of the teams on their schedule have played as of late. I don't want to name any names, but I think Clemson can win with DJ, and I think the staff thoroughly believes, and I think for a good reason, that they can win with DJ. And I think he's gotten a lot of undue criticism. I think people in the national media have just put all the onus on him for Clemson's offensive struggles, which is relative. They're averaging 38 points per game. I don't think people realize that Clemson didn't they didn't score 40 points on a Power 5 team until they played Wake Forest in the second to last week of the year, and they've already done it once in the first game of the year. So I think people should. I think people have just thrown out DJ after they saw the Georgia Tech game, and I don't think they've put a lot of this stuff into context. But I think he's played a lot better, and Kate. If you watch that Furman game, Kate came in for two. He came in for 2 drives and did not look impressive, but it was 2 3-and-outs. Actually, I think it was 3 drives, 2 3-and-outs, and 1 they got a first down off of a PI. So I think at least people in the fan base, at least the Clemson fan base, needed to see it, but I don't think the national non Clemson fans have really taken note of that yet. So I'm not in the camp that DJ is that everything is fixed, but I also believe that DJ is a vastly improved player, and I don't think it's as clear as it may be to some people that DJ is not the best option for Clemson this season. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I got a question for you, and then I'll give you my thoughts. How much do you think he wasn't right physically last year between, what was it, a knee and a shoulder?
Knee, and he had a torn ligament in his throwing hand.
Yes.
Or
So between those two
in his throw,
things.
like one of his fingers, not his actual. I don't think he would
Yeah.
have been able to play if it was his hand, but he did not. Yeah, his
Yeah,
knee
for a
was.
guy that watches almost every play of the season between, 2020 and 2021, could you see, like, if I compare it to Keaton Slovis, I could tell there was something wrong with Keaton Slovis after watching him the year he took over for JT Daniels and threw 30 touchdowns versus the next season when he got hit early in the season in the COVID year, and he wasn't the same quarterback. He just didn't have the velocity on his throws and so forth. Do you think his physical issues were a big factor?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, and I don't want to make it. I don't want to make a ton of excuses for him, because there were things that he just did not do well, regardless, of his injury, that weren't like contingent on whether he was healthy or not. Like, going through his reads and understanding the protection, like when to getting the ball out faster, holding the ball too long, stuff like that. That regardless of your health is things you need to do better.
Yeah.
His footwork was footwork is probably more contingent on his physical shape, but that was really bad last year, and it's it's night and day these days. But yeah, you could tell he was very, I mean, just not even just the injuries, but physically, he was his highest playing weight. I think he was at one point at 265, which is so I mean, he could have lined up at defensive end for us last year. And so he clearly was not in very good shape. And that was a huge talking point. And I don't think it was talked about enough, at least in the national media, until, the off season, where, people are, when people are re-examining Clemson and all that. But during the season, it was never that evident and not talked about that much. And I also think I think Clemson lacks the dudes that they used to have at receiver.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think Clemson right now. I think they have some really talented guys that I'm high on, but a lot of them are young. A lot of them have not, blossomed quite yet. They don't have a T. Higgins. They don't have a Mike Williams. Even Justin Ross when he was healthy. You go back to DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins type. They don't have just a game breaking, like, number one receiver right now. I'm really high on Bo Collins. I'm high on Adam Randall comes back this week. I'm excited to see him, the true freshman. Antonio Williams has looked good in the slot, but they lack those guys that Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. Even Kelly Bryant had Deion Kane, Ray McLeod, Artavis Scott, guys like that. I don't think Clemson has that right now, and I think it would go a long way, just from it would cover up a lot of issues if receivers weren't dropping the ball and stuff like that, because that was a problem. That's been a problem through 2 weeks. I think DJ had the most passes dropped in week one. I think his receivers dropped 6 throws. That were pretty, well thrown balls. It wasn't like he was inaccurate. They just weren't caught for one reason or the other. So I think that Clemson is getting back to they brand themselves as wide receiver U because of all the receiver talent. I mean, you can have that. Y'all can have that debate in the comments about who's wide receiver U, but Clemson has put some really good receiver talent in the league in the last 10 years, and they just that has seemingly fallen off. A lot of fans point to Jeff Scott leaving for USF after the 2019 season as kind of the beginning of the dip in wide receiver play for Clemson. And it's kind of hard to that may be the case, and it's kind of hard to debate it currently because we just haven't seen the improvement and the development since he's left. But the rounding it back to my point, I think that DJ has actually been a bright spot on this offense, all things considered. I think getting better play out of the offensive line would obviously go a long way. I think they've protected him a lot better, but getting the run game going early would be huge. It would put a lot less stress on DJ to make plays. But it's I'm still optimistic about this offense overall. I wish Dabo had pushed harder to get an offensive lineman out of the transfer, or maybe two, out of the transfer portal. He said he offered two, didn't get either one of them, and he didn't want to lower his standards, so he was like, I'm just going to go with what I got. Maybe was that the right decision? That's not what I would have done, but it's one of those things. But I'm still optimistic. I think Clemson has the talent, in the offensive line room, but it's just a lot of it is, a lot of it's young, a lot of it's untested. They're starting a true freshman at right tackle. He looked bad against Georgia Tech, played better against Furman, which is obviously you would hope he would. But I'm still optimistic about the offense, and it's just going to be a work in progress. People that expected Clemson to just come out firing on all cylinders, after if you were on the Clemson train, people were just like, oh, the Clemson's going to be right back to scoring 40 points a game and chucking it all over the field. No, it's they still have some new guys and some new positions, and it's going to take it's going to be a slow build, but I think they're improving, and they're in a lot better shape than they were at this time last year.
Okay, my quick take would be that I made the mistake of just thinking that Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, well, Kelly Bryant had his year, obviously, but there's the progression, and then we go into DJ, and he comes back from 22 points down in a game that he's got to fill in last second for Trevor Lawrence, and bam, he comes back. They beat BC. Then he has his famous game at Notre Dame, throws for 439, and just automatically thinking, okay, he's the next in line based on those two games. So I made that mistake. But I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that even during their championship run, between 2015 and 2020 or so, that even Clemson's best teams, the offensive line was the one unit that was not typically elite.
That's never been, Clemson.
Yeah.
Dabo has had, I believe, four. I believe four offensive linemen drafted since he's been the head coach.
Yeah. So, you're not talking Ohio State's best offensive lines, Georgia's lines, Alabama, etc.
Yeah.
So they've never had that. So when I watched him play game one against Georgia, we then found out later that Georgia moved on from there and completely obliterated Arkansas's offense, a couple of weeks later. So they were just that, decade great defense. But I thought that kind of maybe messed with his confidence a little bit. And obviously he couldn't even, they couldn't even run half their plays that night.
Yeah, no, that was
so
that was probably the worst possible team Clemson could have played.
Yeah.
That night.
And again, a couple of weeks later, KJ Jefferson had a great season, and that they were completely inept against Georgia. They were just, that team was that good. But the wide receiver thing is curious, because every time I get asked about DJ or just respond to the zillion of comments that come in, about how horrible he is, he's garbage, he's trash, the typical comments, because the quarterback gets all the blame. Yes, I see the poor throws. I see the bad decisions. I've seen it all too. Yeah. I watched every meaningful Clemson game last year, which means almost every game in the ACC and the Georgia game and the bowl game. But to your point, I always make this comment. This has been the best wide receiver room in college football for 10 years, going back to Sammy Watkins and all the way through, all the guys you mentioned and others. Okay. When I watched Clemson's wide receiver core last year, I thought I was watching an Illinois game or, just some average team. Like, these guys were just, the only catches they were making were routine catches. Like, besides their drops that were routine, I wasn't seeing, who was it? I think it was T.
Higgins.
T. Higgins made the great catch against Ohio State in the playoff game. But, we could go through the whole list of guys. Not high pointing the football, one-on-one situations where they didn't burn the DB to get open, but still a Clemson wide receiver before 2021 was open because you could just throw the ball up to him and he's plucking the ball out of the air. He's high pointing the football. He's a freakish athlete that's going to take it away from the DB. He's going to do all those things, or he's a better route runner than the guys that we saw last year, and he's going to get open. The level of wide receiver play from arguably best in the nation for a decade to average, I guess, average.
Yeah, and last year was such a struggle because they weren't very deep at wide receiver to begin with, and the injuries started to pile up. And that obviously, when you have a quarterback that's struggling, that's the worst thing you could have, especially with the combined with the offensive line issues. Guys like Joseph Ngata, like when I remember when Clemson first signed Joseph Ngata and Frank Ladson, for that matter, who's now at Miami, Dabo was when they signed him, Dabo was touting them as like, oh, this is the next DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins type combo. And, they just never, Ngata's still on the team and I still have some hope for him. And I think he's playing better than he did last year, but they just never developed into those guys. And so, then you go down the line, guys like EJ Williams is a junior now. He was hurt a lot of last year and he has not played particularly well to start the season. Clemson doesn't last year they didn't really have a true slot guy. Brandon Spector had COVID issues and didn't play at all. Will Taylor tore his ACL. Troy Stellato, who Clemson, they got over Ohio State back in that recruitment. He was one of the best slot guys in the country. I believe he's played like 3 games in his career so far. So it's the lack of wide receiver development compounded with the lack of wide receiver health has been just kind of mind-boggling. The last few years, and it was no more evident than last year that Clemson needs that they need to get that juice, that fire back in their wide receiver room, because it's not there right now. I'm excited for I'm excited for the young guys, but they don't have those, they don't have those dudes they used to have. And it's
all right, Jordan. Yeah, I appreciate you stopping by. Good take on Clemson as always.
I've been going on for I've been going on. Yeah,
we just have
when I get talking about
Clemson,
I get all
You're
I
good,
kind of ramble on, but yeah, thank you for having me on
here. Thanks for being here, Jordan.
All
right. I just made a comment in the chat. We're going to take 3 more calls, and then DeAndre and Jeffrey pulled in. So we can either take 3 more calls or I can take 5 more calls and reduce the length of the calls. Well, either one, we'll move it along here. Let's get out at, I got a heart out at midnight. J-Dub, what's going on tonight?
Hey, how we doing?
Good. What's going on?
Clemson wide receivers. Okay, they've been great.
Yeah.
But there's a certain team in Tuscaloosa and another one in Baton Rouge who I think could make an argument. And
I don't know about going back the entire decade. In the last 5 years, yes. I don't know about the decade. I don't know going back to like 2011 or 12.
Julio Jones, Norwood,
going back before that, actually.
Ridley.
Sure. Ridley, Amari Cooper, and then the four studs that we've seen in the last few years, Judy and Devontae Smith and Ruggs, Jamison Williams.
I'm not trying to take anything. I'm not trying to take anything away from
Adam
Clemson.
Humphreys.
I just don't think it's a slam dunk. And I don't think Bama would be a slam dunk.
But I think I'm taking Clemson. If we're going to go back 10 years and we're going to go Sammy Watkins, Adam Humphreys, Hunter Renfrow, Mike Williams, T. Higgins, and I could keep going.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I like Jordan's take on DJ. My take on DJ is when I've watched him play, and like when I watched him play in the Cheez-It Bowl last year, he doesn't scare me. I'm not afraid that at any moment he's going to take over the game.
No.
No.
No. He just needs to manage the game at this point.
Right.
No, he just needs to be. This is a dumb comparison, but I'll make it. He just needs to be Cade McNamara for that team. Just be that.
Well, he'd only be the best quarterback the school had in the last 20 years at about 115 of the schools we're talking about here. So we are discussing. We are picking amongst the high cotton here. But I have to go back way back to your. I have to go way back to your discussion about bad coaching.
Hang on, I don't know about that. DJ Uiagalelei last year would have been better than any quarterback of all but 15 schools in the country.
Well, I don't know. Trying to be nice to Jordan.
Yeah, let's expand that to maybe 75 teams. He was bad last year, and most teams in the country have thrown out some pretty, Penn State, Trace McSorley. There you go. He's in the NFL right. I'll take him over DJ any day. We could go through every team, and I'll find a quarterback in the last 10 years that's better than DJ.
Well, I really wanted to touch on the bad coaching hires.
Okay.
I agree with Rich Rod, but to me, the most stunning hire that I can remember in my life is Jerry Faust.
Yeah, sure.
That to me is hands down. Sorry, Will, but you win that one. That's the most unbelievable hire ever.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're arguably the greatest football tradition there is on the planet, and you're going to the high school ranks, regardless of what his success was at Cincinnati Moeller, which was enormous, it's just he was so over his head. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it at the time, and then in retrospect,
yeah.
I didn't wish the man ill will or didn't want Notre Dame to blow up or anything. I just thought, you got to be kidding me. Father Habsburg, what are you thinking? And oh boy. But then I think Holtz was the immediate response to that, wasn't he? Wasn't it?
Yes.
Didn't Holtz was his replacement?
Yeah, okay. And they let Jerry Faust run out his entire contract. They gave him a 5-year contract. He was there 81 through 86. And then Holtz came in 86. He was 81 through 85, 5 seasons, and then Holtz in 86. Yep.
Yeah, so you replaced a guy with a spectacular high school resume with a guy who had already proven that he could do it on the college level, because Holtz had led Arkansas to the '79 Sugar Bowl against Bear Bryant, and had success, in Fayetteville and maybe other places.
NC
I'm not
State,
sure.
Minnesota. Yep.
Yeah. So we knew he could do it, right? Well, anyway, I just wanted to. I know you got them all piled up and you got a hard out. I just wanted to get in there, and I just couldn't let. I had to get the Jerry Faust thing in.
Yeah, that's a good one, no doubt.
Hey, good luck to everybody's teams this weekend, unless you're ULM.
Exactly. Thanks,
right, thanks, Mark.
Appreciate it. All right. DeAndre with the one super chat of the night. DeAndre with the prize. We got to get DeAndre on here. He's paid for the show. $2 on 2 hours and 37 minutes. How much money am I making per hour at this rate? All right. We got Tim on the line. Tim, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good.
You knew when you were talking Pac-12, I had a call. By the way, I was really happy with Darrell and how he I told him the check's in the mail because he's come full circle on my Pac-12 team. So
yeah, he's
very
impressed.
happy with him.
He's a big Pac-12 guy now.
But when you're talking about your power rankings for your conferences,
yeah,
you keep bringing up the fact that the Pac-12 is 5-1. And that's why you're digging them the most, right? That's pretty much the most damning point.
I don't know that it's the most damning point. No, they've got the worst record and they've got the worst Power 5 record. Yeah. And if they had a string of beating Houston, Cincinnati, Fresno State, et cetera, outside the Power 5, those are better than Power 5 wins. Those are better than a lot of Power 5 wins. So it's not strictly Power 5 is everything over a group of 5 win. No, I look at the teams that they're beating or losing to.
Yeah, because unfortunately for the Pac-12, the teams that are playing those Power 5 teams are the worst teams in the league. When you've got you look at Colorado,
Oregon?
Arizona. What's that?
Yeah, Colorado and Arizona. Yeah,
Arizona State,
but arguably the two best as well.
Well, yeah, the Oregon situation, I think.
Yeah, they're playing the best team in the country. Yeah.
I would say that what happened to Oregon is going to happen to at least 70% of the teams in the country that go up against that Georgia team first week of the year. The thing about the Oregon issue is that you're bringing a brand new staff into, they call it a neutral game, but it's Atlanta. And you have a brand new coach, brand new coordinators. To say that represents the strength of the Pac-12, I don't think maybe we thought a little too much. But going into it, when you have a brand new coach coming in who's a coordinator, has never been a head coach before, I'm not sure why we had expectations that Oregon was going to be one of the top teams in the Pac-12. It was kind of the way that the narrative goes is that Georgia blows out one of, if not the best team in the Pac-12. And I think that by the end of the year, maybe even halfway through the year, we're going to realize that Oregon still has a great team, but they're growing and they've got a lot of growing pains on that staff, I think. I'm not really sold, to be honest with you, on the coordinators that they have. But overall, the teams that we thought would not be the better teams in the league are the ones that are kind of coming up. Again, we thought that USC was a couple of years down the road. I still think USC is not going to all this talk about playoffs. I'm still on the same boat I was at. I'm thinking we're a 9-win team this year. But, I might be wrong. I very well might be wrong on that. Darrell said, he hit me at a great point. He said, the best defense is good offense. The reason why we're not sold on is because of the offense, of the defense. But I can't see many teams on our schedule that are going to be able to score with us. I see some teams that put up points, but there's a number of teams that aren't going to be able to put the points up as well. So, or at least to keep up with them. So I was just curious because if you have other reasons why the Pac-12 is the worst conference, I got you. But I think really to say that they're 1-4 in the against the Power 5, Cam Rising, that game alone, to go to Florida and Cam Rising, right? Oh, hello. And go to and walk into the swamp and lose a game they probably should have won. I mean, that again, that interception, Cam Rising on
Sure, I
second
take that
down,
into consideration. Yes.
you know,
They
and maybe
didn't lose
Florida is
50-0. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was really surprising to have a veteran quarterback, Cam Rising, go in there and do that. It was really actually one of the most shocking things that weekend to me when I finally saw that interception. I just shook my head. I mean, what was he doing throwing that ball? But and then you have Arizona going against Michigan State. ASU going up against Oklahoma State. These are all the best teams in the conference. You know what I mean? Georgia's the best SEC team, most likely. Alabama, Georgia, whatever.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State might be the best team in the Big 12. We don't know,
Sure.
but it's up there. And even Mississippi State, the Bulldogs, they're a tough out.
Absolutely.
So losing those games, I don't know. But then I look at the upside, going into Camp Randall and winning. That game. The one thing about that game was surprising to me is I wanted to see what Cam Ward had, but I was more impressed with the defense.
Sure.
That they showed there. Again, in a tough place to win. Wins like that were really impressive. But I don't think that we're going to see the Pac-12 as the best or even the second best. But man, I'm gonna be interested to keep watching your power rankings because I don't know. I think that the top half and schools like we knew Oregon State was going to be good, but they're better than advertised as well. I think so. I'll be interested this weekend. We'll see what they can do. We'll see what Washington can do because I think they really do have a good shot at it.
Oh, I do too. So you don't think my power rankings are fair, even though I explained that this number 5 ranking right now isn't anywhere close to what that number 5 ranking meant last year when there was no question this is the worst conference. All the numbers prove it. It is what it is, that it's a big debate. It's a very close race among 3 or 4 conferences right now.
Yeah, I mean, last year the Pac-12 had Oregon and Utah, and then just a mess of varying degrees, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of that is coaching. A lot of that is giving Jonathan Smith, another year because it's easy to get guys to come to your school. If you're a school like Alabama or Ohio State, and or USC and build up that way. But if you're in Oregon State, it's really difficult. You have to build it internally. You got to build it, with a program, with a culture, and with players who fit your scheme. And again, that's my team. That was my dark horse at the beginning of the year. And again, I'm still thinking in my mind that they're going to be right in. They're going to be right in it with Oregon. I think it might even come down to the Civil War, who wins the other one. Because I think that I don't know. I for some reason, I know that the Pac-12 isn't picking for the championship game, but there is still a North and a South. So you can win the North and you can win the South.
Sure.
Statistically. I think statistically it's going to come down to those two, but I think that the North beats itself up, and kind of like what the South used to do for years. The North is going to beat itself up, and it probably is going to be a couple of teams from the South, only because of the fact that I really do think that Washington State, Oregon State are legit. So it'll be interesting to see that as well. But no, I mean, I'm not. I get it. You do lay out the method for your rankings, but I'm just saying, being 4-1 against the Power 5, it really comes down. There's a lot more. It's a little more. I think you need a larger sample size.
I lay all that out. Yes. Well, this is the only sample size we have, though. That's what I've got to go on.
Okay. Well, I mean, Darrell really stole a lot of my thunder when we was talking about different games, but I am going to be
1 and 5, by the way, not 1 and 4. It's 1 and 5. Yeah.
So, okay, 1 and 5. But I want to start seeing, the power teams. So this week is where we'll have some better teams. So maybe if we end up being 1 and 7 after this weekend, then maybe we'll have a big conversation. And I'll have to come eat some humble pie.
I think the conference, but again, it comes down to what the performance looks like. If Oregon loses in overtime and Washington loses on a last-second field goal against Michigan State, I'm going to look at those performances and say those were really good performances. And the record. So for the teams, for the individual teams, all that matters is you either won the game or you lost the game. It goes in the win column or the loss column. But we're evaluating. So to me, if Utah would have went down to Florida and lost by 21 points, that's a completely different outlook than that they blew a game they easily could have won. Right. To me, so I don't come away from that game thinking either team's better than the other. I don't know that Florida's better than Utah. They beat them on one given night at home. That doesn't mean to me that they won the game. They have to be given credit for the win, but they're not, in my mind, better.
I take it back. We could be 1-8 because I forgot about Cal. Arguably with Colorado, the worst offenses. And sorry, we'll plug yours. And Notre Dame's getting pretty close. But arguably, and Iowa. So maybe that'd be great. Iowa, Notre Dame, Cal, and Colorado.
Well, also the Colorado plays Minnesota. That's pretty much a given of a loss. So it could be 1-9.
Colorado's playing Minnesota?
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. So I mean, these teams in the Pac-12.
But that's not a fair matchup. So again, I also weight the matchup. I don't expect Colorado to beat Minnesota. Minnesota's probably like the 5th best team in the Big Ten. They shouldn't, and we know that they won't. And so I'm not going to ding the Pac-12 for. Yeah, it's going to be another loss in the loss column against the Power 5, but I'm not even going to consider that game.
There's a very strong possibility that Colorado's going to win a game the rest of the. I mean, they're not going to win. They're not. I can't think of a team in the Pac-12 they could beat.
I'm actually going to give the Pac-12 some credit if they just hang in that game.
Now, Colorado, again, I don't know what on earth Colorado was thinking. Apparently, they weren't watching Carl Durrell at UCLA. And they decided to double down. So, how about that Carl Durrell guy? We'll give him another shot. He drove UCLA into the ground. We were probably as sad to see him go as the rest of the Pac-12 was to see us get rid of Helton. So, I mean, I don't know, Colorado. That's the one thing. Everyone blames USC for destroying the Pac-12 and busting. It's schools like Colorado that came in that were supposed to do something. That really beyond outside of 1 year, and there was some hope when they got Tucker that they were going to turn it around. They did show some signs, but they haven't done anything in the Pac-12.
Yep.
Thank goodness for Utah doing something and carrying the league for the last 2 years. But Colorado has just been a huge disappointment. All right, Mark. I think I've filled up the Pac-12 requirement for the day.
Yes, there we go. We're going to take 3 calls in 1 minute, I guess, is what we're going to do.
All right, sorry about that. No,
you're good. You're good, Tim.
All right.
Thanks.
See you guys later.
We take the 20-minute calls off the top, and then we take the 1-minute calls after that, because good Lord, I've been on here for 3 hours. Goodness gracious. And DeAndre's paid me $2. So here we go. David, rapid fire.
Wow. The hardest working man in college football is Mark Rogers.
Hear that line again. That's David, please. Never. I went on a rant about that a couple months ago. I said, I never want to hear that again because that's the last thing I want to be.
Can I just say you're grossly underpaid as well? Probably.
Yes, I will. I've been saying that. That's why I put up the sponsor the show banner. Because I can't work for 3 hours for $2. That doesn't work.
There you go. Checks in the mail, Mark. All right, here we go. A little bit of thoughts. Listen to Steve Deace's Bigger 10 podcast today. And I don't know if you've addressed this rumor, but his partner, Aaron McIntyre, said the best fit for the coach at Nebraska would be one Urban Frank Meyer. Your thoughts?
Well, of course he's the best fit.
Well, any chance on that, by the way? Or is that even like realistic? What do you think?
I wouldn't think so. I think that Urban Meyer wants to go to a program where he can win a national championship because that's what his coaching expectations are. He's at that level that's what people expect of him. And until proven otherwise, I just don't see anybody winning a national championship at Nebraska.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to reinvent Tom Osborne. Dace had an interesting point. I still think Matt Campbell is a possible hire there.
Yeah.
But, I think your point is right. They need somebody that's a program builder there that, has done it from, the top to bottom and taken it. Dace had mentioned that they need, two things. He had mentioned the coach at Coastal Carolina, and the name escaped me, Mark.
Jamie Chadwell.
Yes. And he had also mentioned that they should go back to the triple option, that they need a gimmick. I don't know what your thought is on that.
I think a gimmick would work for a year or two, but I don't think that's the direction that you need to go. No, I don't think you win with gimmicks long term. I think you do that at Coastal Carolina. That's where
Okay.
you do that. I got to disagree with Steve on that. You want to be your version of Wisconsin is what you want to be. They can recruit
Right.
better than Wisconsin, so why
Right.
not just run a traditional offense of some sort that's got an identity, that's got creativity, but and win the division and be a better version, or at least as good a version as Wisconsin, and go 9-3 on a typical year.
Right. Yeah, interesting that they couldn't do that, getting better recruits, as we had talked about, where their recruiting class is ranked the last few years.
Yeah.
Want to get to the games this week. By the way, let's start with the Big Ten.
Okay.
Good chance that the Big Ten, with Purdue, Syracuse, Washington, and Michigan State and Penn State and Auburn goes 0-3 this week, or
yeah,
better chance they go 3-0.
Well, the better chance is that they go. Who do we have besides Purdue, Syracuse, Penn State, Auburn's? Minnesota, Colorado. Oh, Michigan State, Oh, so they've got 4 Power Fives, but Colorado technically makes the cut, but doesn't in any kind of context. It's more likely they go 3-0.
Oh, you mean they go 0-3?
3-0.
The Big Ten. Oh, you think the Big Ten could go 3-0 with that? Then
Michigan State, Washington, Penn State, Auburn, Purdue, Syracuse. Yes.
Okay.
I'm riding the ticket of 3-0 over 0-3. Absolutely.
Wow. See, of the 3, who's the most likely to lose?
Penn State.
I disagree. I think it's Michigan State at Washington.
I think they're all like 2 or 3 point spreads. So I'm not really super convinced on any one of them being more so than the other ones.
I think that Auburn-Penn State game could tell a lot about both programs going forward this season, to be honest with you.
It's going to tell me more about Auburn, but I agree.
Another game I think that's going to tell us a lot about 2 programs, and I think I don't know, is this your hands down most interesting game? Is the Miami at Texas A&M game?
I'm really not as interested. I know I named it as my number 1 game because I just think by all logic, it's the most important, interesting game. I'm not going to go through the various factors, but if I could only watch one game, I don't think I would watch that game.
Well, I just think that's interesting for the trajectory of the 2 programs going forward. Kind of like we were talking about with the other game. Because if Texas A&M loses in College Station to Miami, wow.
Oh, it's a huge game. And for Miami, they're playing more with house money. They don't need to win that game. If they come home 27-24 losers, they're still moving on with the program. And, Mario's in his first year, not his 5th year. So it's a much bigger game for Texas A&M.
Okay. Yeah, because I think this season could get away from A&M if they lose that game.
Good. Oh, my word. Yes.
Then
that's the cushion Miami's got. They go back and they play Georgia Tech and Duke.
True.
And Virginia. They don't play Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, et cetera, et cetera.
But I was saying that also could be showing that Miami might be on the ascent a little bit if they go into College Station and get a win too.
Yeah.
So I was kind of coming at it from that perspective for them. Boy, I tell you what, if Fisher loses that game at home, will the natives be starting to get a little bit restless about that Brinks truck that they backed up and gave them, all that dough?
They're already restless.
Well, I told you I thought they were overrated at 6 or 7 coming into the year.
Sure.
I thought that was really high. If they're going to make hay, I think it's next year, Mark, when that recruiting class becomes sophomores.
Sure. So, absolutely.
I would think. Are you going to have Merrill on for picks?
Yeah, I just need to upload that. We recorded today. Yes, we
Okay.
did.
Oh, I'm just saying it. I'm thinking lock this week. I still got that. Have you checked that Nebraska Oklahoma line? I think it's at 12.5 or.
He told me 11.
Oh, if it's at 11, I'm riding it. I'm telling you what, I think, I don't know how Oklahoma isn't favored by more going into a program that just lost their coach.
Because they might benefit from this. And that's not just a knock on Scott Frost. That's a psychological play on this is our battle cry, us against the world, cut loose, go, run through the walls. Let's go. What do we have to lose?
I'm not putting the rent or the car payment on it, but I may put, a couple dollars. So we'll see. Hey, any chances you having Phil Steele back down the road too, Mark?
Yeah, we should, because every time he's on, he enjoys it and lets me know that he will come on anytime. I just kind of forget about it.
That's cool.
I should ask him. Yes.
All right, Mark. We'll
write
always
it down right here. Phil Steele.
Yep. Your handy notepad there, Mark. If
yes,
you can make
I appreciate Phil Steele coming on, and he certainly, tells me that we can have him on anytime. So not anytime, but you know what I mean. All right.
Well,
thank you, Dave.
The most hardest working man and underpaid man in college football.
Thank you, David.
Uh-huh.
Have a good. I thought I just explained to David. Anyway. All right. I got DeAndre. DeAndre, how you doing?
Hey, well, matter of fact, he just answered my question.
Good.
I was going to ask you why the Nebraska Oklahoma game line was so different, was so low.
DeAndre, we're losing you.
Okay, you hear me, Mark?
We can now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why was it at 11. But also Jordan,
More
he
work
brought
in
up.
Vegas. I don't know.
Yeah, Jordan, he brought up a good point about the Clemson wide receivers, which I've been saying for the last 2 years. I don't know if it's Tyler Grissom or like the hype behind the Goddard and Latson, but I'm gonna let that go because I know you've been on for a while. Now, one more question I got. Where did you take Washington State, Wisconsin? Did you take Wisconsin to cover?
No.
Okay, I was wondering about that because I said I would never bet. I didn't bet on that game last week, but the reason why I say that I don't remember what you picked. But however, it's like Wisconsin never covers. I can't remember the last time when they played somebody on their level outside of maybe Michigan a couple years ago. They have ever blown out anybody who's on their level. So well, Mark, you get some rest. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to get my rest. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm not going to bed. I'm just getting off of a 3-hour live stream. But wait a minute. I think Phil Steele actually chronicles this. DeAndre, you're telling me that Wisconsin doesn't cover against decent teams
outside of Michigan. I can't remember the last time they blew out somebody.
Well, I can't imagine. Just what you're saying is just not mathematically okay. Last year,
yeah, I'm listening.
Last year, they were an 11-point favorite against Illinois. They beat them by 24.
Okay, but
they were a 3-point favorite against Purdue. They beat them by 17. They were a 3-point favorite against Iowa. They beat them by 20.
Okay, I give you.
They were a 24-point favorite against Northwestern. They beat them by 28. They were a 9-point favorite against Nebraska. Yeah?
Yeah, Nebraska.
I just read you off 6 games where they covered the spread against pretty good teams.
Yeah, outside of Purdue.
That was last year. Outside of Purdue, Iowa went to the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, we also seen Iowa offense. I just can't really credit that.
Yeah, but they were one of the 15 best teams in the country.
Well, if you say so.
Well, I do say so. And you just told me that Wisconsin never covers the spread. And I just read you 6 games last year where they covered the spread.
Okay, and I'm agreeing with you. They did.
Okay.
But
I'm just, you know me, DeAndre. I'm just not going to let a comment just go if I just know better otherwise.
I just don't. Who they play out of conference last year?
Eastern Michigan, Notre Dame, and Army.
Who was favored to win that Notre Dame game? Notre Dame.
Wisconsin was a 6-point favorite, which I have no idea why, because I certainly took Notre Dame to win the game.
And Notre Dame caught a bunch of INTs at the end and ran them back for a touchdown.
Yes. Yep, they did.
Who was the year before? Cause I know Phil still go for 5 to 6 years.
Well, that was nobody played out of conference games the year before. So you got to go back to 2019. They didn't play anybody outside of conference. They played South Florida, Central Michigan, and Kent State.
Okay. And what about the year before that?
They played Western Kentucky, New Mexico, and BYU.
How was the BYU score?
They were a 22-point favorite. They lost by 3.
Okay. So
that's
they don't have a lot
of your points. But the year before, they were a 16-point favorite against BYU, and they beat them by 34.
Okay. All right. That was Wilson was there at the time, right? The quarterback.
Well, Zach Wilson would have not been there at that point. He was only a starter for what, maybe 2 years, 19 and 20.
Right. Yeah. Well, Mark, I don't want to hold you up, man. I would just that mainly I was calling about the Oklahoma and Nebraska. See why Oklahoma was only 11-point favorite. You don't want. You need to.
I think Nebraska might pull off an upset.
You think so? I'm not gonna put no money on that one. Yeah, I'm not gonna put out. I like that. I know you can't tell us your picks online because you got to go to Patreon. And let me tell you, it does help out. I don't know. The last 2 weeks, we just getting a feel for stuff. But but you did a great job. Because sometimes I go against you, especially when I know the teams.
Sure.
Yeah, because I know I picked. I think I picked Washington State because I think Washington. I don't know nothing about Washington State. That's why I picked Washington State to be to win outright, but to get the points in. That's why I picked them. So
the two games that I immediately took the points, but I even can kick myself now because I had a hunch that they would be an upset. Was App State, Texas A&M, and Washington State, Wisconsin. Those are the 2 games when I almost picked an upset.
You know what though? I don't know why teams keep playing App State at home, especially when they highly ranked. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, they always taking that. They come close to beating teams.
Yep.
That are way better than them. They beat South Carolina, North Carolina.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, and we
All
know
right, DeAndre. I appreciate the super chat.
Oh man,
thanks for being here. And I'm 12 minutes over my hard hit time. What am I going to get for this? What's my? Are we just going to end the show here? I'm 12 minutes over. We've sunk to 99 people on the line. I don't even have anybody watching. Like, what's the incentive to keep going here? Do we have any incentive? Maybe not. We're going to go rapid fire 30 seconds. Jeffrey, hit me for 30 seconds. It's all you.
I got two things. One, a football. I had more, but you got to go, and I don't blame you because it's late. IU Western Kentucky. What are your thoughts on that game? Can Indiana win?
Western Kentucky. My thoughts are they both suck. There you go.
Okay. Well,
they're horrible.
If you're too tired, I was gonna ask. The other night I was on the Pac-12 show.
Tired. It has everything to do with a 3-hour live stream.
I don't blame you. But the other night, if
after
you
an hour
can
live
answer
stream.
my question on something I can't do. I was on the Pac-12 show the other night with Tim and Tony. They're awesome.
Yes.
But it was last week. They tried to get me to drop the link to my channel in the private chat. How do you do that? How do you do it?
You go to the private chat, which I don't know what you're working on. It's right on the right side of the screen, and you just go in the private chat and you drop the link. I don't know. I'm not looking at your computer to know what you're looking at. So, anything else, Jeffrey?
I guess I don't have anything else. The only other thing is what are the games that you're looking forward to the most this weekend, like the top 3 games. That's it.
I ran down my top 5 games before. Miami,
Yeah, I
Texas
just got
A&M,
on here.
BYU,
Sorry.
Oregon, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Penn State, Auburn, Michigan State, or Mississippi State, LSU. Those are my top 5.
Sounds good. I can't wait for week 3. Like I said, I should have called in earlier, but I was watching the NFL game. Sorry.
There you go. No issues, Jeffrey. Thanks a lot. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Are we really going to take a call from this guy? Really? I said hard out time at 12. Good Lord.
Listen, I literally just got on. All right. I just want to tell you this right now, Mark. I just got on and I see you you're trying to get out of here.
Yes.
You need to understand how to, first of all, put in the time. All right. You need to learn how to put in the time, and you need to learn how to stick it out when you got people who want to talk football.
Stick
Mark.
it out. I don't stick it out. No, I stick it out way too long. We're gonna the 2 hours is going to be max unless we're making some compensation for it. We didn't make any compensation tonight. I'm working.
Well, look at this. You got a ZZM super chat up on the screen.
Yeah,
What are you talking about?
tonight.
Compensation. Look at ZZM.
Yes, compensation.
And he's a Buckeye fan. He's a Buckeye fan on top of that, Mark.
I could be making videos about Jimbo Fisher making money.
So I'm just curious. What do you got? I'm just curious why you're hurrying off the air.
Because I've been on for 4 hours. I did an hour before this. I've been on for 4 hours and 7 minutes.
Oh. Well, we all appreciate your servitude, and absolutely. I am a little insulted that you said Indiana's trash. That's first of all.
I was somewhat kidding based on just basically saying I don't care what's coming out of anyone's mouth. I'm just going to agree with you and say bye. We're done. but yes, Jeffrey understands. He's on here all the time asking me questions. But he asked for my take on Western Kentucky and Indiana. What take do I have on that?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Western Kentucky did win that game last year, correct?
No. Indiana beat them like 38-35.
Okay.
Indiana did win the game. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do think Indiana's better than last year. And you watch that Indiana-Illinois game was not a bad game, actually. I think both those teams are improved.
I watched a lot of that game. I enjoyed the game. But I don't have any recollection of it.
So real quick, again, I know you, in all seriousness, I know you're trying to get off here, but I was just going to mention real quick. You look up that, and I know you got the Big Ten slate up on the panel here. I think the one game that Vegas is way off on is Purdue-Syracuse. I think Purdue is leaps and bounds better than Syracuse. And don't tell me that going on the road to Syracuse is going to be a tall order.
I tend to agree with you based on. And I hate to go back to last year, but that's all we've got except for 2 games. And they each played an opponent of merit. Penn State's much better than Louisville. But yeah, I just, Purdue's coming off a 9-win season in which they played a number of strong Big Ten teams and Tennessee and won their fair share versus Syracuse not being a good football team, but then winning this early season game and being I think they're like a 2-point favorite.
So yeah, there was something interesting with your picks, the picks, of course, you give to us as the media. Yeah. You had, I want to say you had in the spreadsheet that you sent out to us, Purdue is the 1.5 point favorites. I'm assuming that's the opening line, correct?
Well, what I do is I go to a site that's got like all the major sports books. It's got like 8 or 10 of them. And I take the most prominent line, the one that's used the most.
Okay. Cause I believe you have Purdue 1.5 point favorites. I go to ESPN and of course they're looking at Caesar's Sportsbook and it says Syracuse 1.5. So I thought, well, either there was a typo here in the spreadsheet or, the line has moved to Syracuse by 1.5. I'm always fascinated when the line actually moves.
Never is there a typo on those sheets. Those are double and triple checked.
So the line must have
I'm
moved,
kidding.
which
I don't check them.
well,
Yeah, I
my
guess.
guess is the line just moved. But it is a fascinating when the line moves in a game like that, to swing to the other side. If you get what I'm saying.
Well,
So
that means that the public is betting on Syracuse.
yeah, which I just find very strange.
According to ESPN's FPI, this is pretty significant. Syracuse has given a 58% chance of winning this game.
Yeah, what am I missing on that, Mark? Am I missing a mark on Syracuse? What?
If you're missing it, we're both missing it because
that's weird. That is.
Yeah, Syracuse is a 1.5-point favorite. I don't know where the line started, but
Mark, I don't expect that game. I don't expect that game to be close. I mean, seriously, and I would normally say that about a Power 5 matchup on the road.
You are somewhat biased.
I mean, well,
you're a Big Ten guy.
I am, but Mark, I also picked Auburn to beat Penn State. I don't think I'm that biased.
Okay.
I don't know. To me, that matchup. I mean, Colorado, Minnesota is a horrendous matchup, as you know.
Sure.
As is UConn, Michigan, as is Southern Illinois, Northwestern, and New Mexico State, Wisconsin. But man, I tell you, that Syracuse Purdue game, I would never ever bet on a game. Just that's my own ethics, but that line is to me egregious. The Rutgers at Temple game is fascinating to me. It's an ESPN Plus game, and Rutgers going on the road. And listen, Iowa gets Rutgers next week at night.
Now I am 21 minutes over, and now we're talking about Rutgers and Temple.
All right, I'll pick up the line. Last thing
response I gave Jeffrey, I'm just going to say, yeah, they both suck. It doesn't matter.
Last thing I'll say: Michigan State, Washington.
Yeah.
No read on that game. None. Because neither of those teams have played another team with a pulse.
Sure.
I mean, no read on that game. I believe Washington's actually favored. Aren't they favored in that game?
Yes. Well, my read would be that I know I don't know. I am more sure that Michigan State's a good team than I am that Washington's a good team.
Sure. More talented team. I think you have greater faith in Mel Tucker than
I don't know if they're more talented.
Well, I don't know. Peach Bowl.
I don't know if we went to recruiting rankings that they've got a more talented team.
Well, we could talk recruiting rankings, but we can also talk about what they returned from a Peach Bowl team. Well, there's also developed talent, Mark.
Sure. Of course there is.
I'm just saying, I don't even, what did Wisconsin or Washington do last year?
Oh, they were horrible. They went 4-8.
Yeah, so I just, I haven't looked at recruiting rankings, but Mel Tucker's recruited pretty well there, hasn't he?
He's only had two classes, I guess. So Washington's last class was awful. So maybe I'm wrong. I'm going off of their typical. They were 26th the year before in 21. They just had a bad head coach. Now they've got maybe from Fresno State. He did a really good job. They were 18 the year before that in 2020.
Yeah, I mean it's a top 25 program. I give them that, but to be you're talking about a 4-8 team going up against a team that won a Peach Bowl last year. I just I don't know. It's an interesting one with neither team having played anybody, and
it reminds me of watching Michigan State and Mark D'Antonio play Arizona State 2 consecutive years, home and home, and I thought Michigan State was the better team both years, and they lost both games. And this must have been 2018 and 19 because Jaden Daniels was the quarterback for both games. Yeah.
Well, there's something weird about. Well, first of all, Mark D'Antonio that was literally the game back in East Lansing was Mark D'Antonio's final year, correct?
Yes.
And there's something weird going. I mean, there is something weird going out to Tempe. I mean, Iowa fans know all about going out. I mean, I remember the 2010 Tucson game. There's something weird about going down to Arizona and playing a Pacific time game at 9:00 Central time. Yeah. So I mean that is a factor, but this isn't. What time is that game? 7:30. So yeah, it's at least listen. At least it's not a 9:30 game. I mean, if it was that late game, yeah, that screws with you.
Yeah, that screws with me when you talk Central Time. I don't know what you're talking about. 9:30. Oh yeah, 10:30. Okay, gotcha.
But you're still Eastern Time, and Ohio's still Eastern Time.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, they got the Michael Penix storyline. By the way, Pizza Woman, give me a break. Have you looked at Penix's numbers? No offense to the Pizza Woman.
Were you talking about this year?
Yeah, I mean, I
This
understand they
number?
haven't played anybody, but you know, let's give the guy a break. He's putting up so far, albeit against bad competition. He has been terrific this year, Mark.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I've not watched Washington or what they're doing.
Well, how dare the Pizza Woman rip into Penix? Why do you allow the Pizza Woman to control the narrative here, Mark?
Because she's looking at 4 TDs and 7 picks last year. That's what she's looking at.
Well, she was also hurt, right? I don't know. You know, and he had what 2 pick sixes against a really good Iowa defense. But
you're gonna have to teach me how to transition from one graphic to another without going full screen. I hate how that looks. There's his.
Look at those numbers, though. I mean, so far, again, I know it's early. He's thrown for almost 700 yards, Mark, in 2 games.
Corey, you're looking at these stats through Iowa colored
I
glass.
know I'm not.
You gotta
700
remember
yards
that.
in 2 games, a
Oh,
180.
those are nice figures, but it's nothing's. It's good. Yeah, it's good, but okay.
What do you mean? It's good. Show me another quarterback with better numbers through 2 games.
I'm guessing that there are other quarterbacks who have better numbers through 2 games.
No, those are. I mean, all I'm saying again.
Some,
I know they haven't played anybody, but I'm just saying.
Yes. Let's put it into context. Even if he does have the best numbers in the country, and he doesn't.
And let's also acknowledge.
I can't believe now at 26 minutes past my heart out, we're arguing about Michael Penix's stats against FCS opponents.
Hey, you're welcome to cut me off at any moment. I won't take personal offense. I'll still show up on Tuesday.
Okay, let's see. The Marshall quarterback is completing. Guess how many percentage of his passes?
Is that let's see.
The Marshall quarterback, and they played Notre Dame last week.
Is that like Zach Wells or what's his name?
It's Henry Columbi, who was
That's the Texas Tech
at,
Texas Tech kid. Yep.
Yes.
What's he?
85.1%.
Wow, and he went on the road at Notre Dame and did that, correct?
Caleb Williams, 79.6, 6 TDs, no picks.
How many yards for those guys?
350 and 590.
Okay, well, look at Penix, 680.
Okay, you want yardage? We give you doesn't count because he's played 3 games, but we'll give you
2 games.
Yes, we'll give you. Well, he's got 3 games. We'll give you Will Rogers, Mississippi State, 763.
Yeah, well, Mississippi State's been prolific. I'm just saying. I mean, can we agree?
9 TDs and a 79% completion percentage.
Okay,
So
well, that's fine. But I think we can both agree,
the best
though.
numbers in the country. So I'm
just saying we can both agree those are pretty impressive numbers for Penix.
They are impressive numbers. I'm just doing what I do, and people just need to understand that's like a couple callers ago. Somebody told me that Wisconsin never covers the spread against any good teams, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I pull out the Phil Steele and I go right to, because I know he's got the number, and I list off 6 marginal to good teams like Purdue, like Iowa, that Wisconsin covered the spread against last year.
I was going to say they beat Iowa by like 20.
Yeah, they were a 3-point favorite. They were a 3-point favorite against Purdue. They beat them by 17. They were an 11-point favorite against Illinois. They beat them by 24. I'm like, what are you talking about? So,
well, you don't got to push back on me on this, Mark. All I'm saying is, yes, he hasn't played anybody.
Yes,
I acknowledge it. He had a really good 2020. He was hurt much of last year. It was a bad season. It was a terrible team.
Yeah.
But I do think that we'll see what happens. I mean, Michigan State doesn't have a reputation for having a great secondary and a great defense in general. I expect them to be better because I think they have talent back there. But if he goes out there and I mean, boy, I'm just saying those, even against the lowliest of FBS teams. Those are impressive numbers. So I'll be interested to see what he does this week. And I'm kind of rooting for him. He's just had a weird career between the ACL and then what happened last year. It's just been a weird career for him. And now he's playing out in Washington. It's just, he's a good quarter. He's got a good arm.
Oh, he's got a good arm. He looks like the second coming of, I'll pick out a left-handed quarterback, Steve Young, one play, and then he looks like he couldn't throw the ball in the ocean the next play.
Yeah, Ohio State fans know all about how good Michael Penix is. I mean, go back to that 2020 game. That was a heck of a performance. All right, Mark. Well, you enjoy your night. You enjoy whatever you're going to be doing. And have you had supper yet?
Yes, we ate earlier. Yes, we did.
Okay.
A fine meatloaf supper. Yes.
Meatloaf. Did you have some mashed potatoes with that? And
meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and I forced myself to eat some broccoli because it's good for me.
Yeah. Are you a ketchup guy with meatloaf?
If the meatloaf is good, which it was, I do a little bit of both because the ketchup smothers the taste. But yeah, if the meatloaf's really good, but I do like to dip a few slices in the ketchup. Yes, a little bit of both. Just like if I've got really good French fries, I don't need ketchup, but I'll still opt for the ketchup every so often.
All right, but final question, Mark. Best French fries.
Ooh, best French fries.
I'm going to give some free publicity to a select
that
company, a franchise out there.
See, this is going to be difficult for me to say because every good French fry that I can think of, I can't come up with. They weren't like chain places. They're
really okay.
It's more just places I've been, diner type places that were kind of nondescript places. I will like my French fries. I don't like steak fries. Those are awful. For as much as I love Five Guys burgers, their fries, perfect example here where you need the ketchup. I need ketchup on Five Guys fries because I like the texture of the fries, but the flavor of the fries are no good.
What about Freddy's? You like Freddy's fries?
I've never heard of Freddy's.
Well, you don't have Freddy's out there? You like the shoestring fries? You like the shoestrings?
I tend to like slightly crunchy fries.
Okay, so you're probably a McDonald's fan.
McDonald's makes the best fast chain fries. Yes. Best flavor, best texture when they're made correctly, when they haven't been sitting around for 4 hours.
And so I'm curious, do you guys have you been to a Culver's? Do they have Culver's out in your area?
I think you brought this up to me before and I had never heard of it. No.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, you got to try it. So if you like crinkle cuts, Culver's, but Freddy's has really good shoestring fries. Apparently you don't have a Freddy's out there. And I would say, in response to your Five Guys comment, I agree with you. And if you're going to spend Five Guys type money, they better be giving you unbelievable quality fries for the prices that you pay at Five Guys.
Oh yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I frequent there. See, I can't even talk after 4.5 hours. Frequent there fairly consistently, and if you go with one other person, that's one thing. You're still going to drop like $35.
Yeah, it's insane.
But if like I went a couple months ago with both of my kids, and I'm dropping like $52 on burgers and fries, it's like seriously. And we're very conservative when it comes to like if we go to a decent restaurant and leave, and I think, man, I just blew like $92, and we are not appetizer people. We are not dessert people. We love dessert, but I don't like to sit in a restaurant and eat dessert. I'd rather eat dessert at home. So my kids have pretty much like they have fallen in line with my habits and my directives. It's just funny to see. My son even commented to me a couple months ago. He's like, yeah, it scares me sometimes how much I'm like you. But basically we don't order appetizers. We order water
Yeah.
I decided
I'm a water guy.
I decided sometime maybe in my 30s, I'm like, why am I drinking Coke? It's not good for me. And I could save myself like $2.53 every time I go to a restaurant and drink water. I should be drinking water. And it's a rare occasion that I get something else to drink with a standard meal. It's different if, I'm with someone, there's a, wine or something like that, but that's not, other than that, water and no dessert. And you leave some of these places and you're dropping like $90. And I'm thinking, man, if you got dessert and appetizers, this could be $140 meal. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're paying for a big family, but I'll say this. I agree with you on the pop thing. I don't typically order which is it pop or soda out there in your neck of the woods?
I'm a big pop guy, but
Okay.
out on the East Coast, it's soda.
Yeah, most people
by
around here.
the way, Corey, we've got like 90 people watching us. See, we don't have these big shows like you do on your Iowa channel. You're from the Hawkeye of the Storm, where you have like 1,000 people watching you.
Oh yeah, yeah. We got thousands listening to our pop
I've
versus
got to have
soda.
stuff like Scott Frost getting fired to have 1,100 or 1,200 people on here with me, but otherwise, they just don't show up for.
Maybe you should have more pop versus soda debates, Mark. But no, I was just gonna say, underrated fries, Chick-fil-A fries. I love the waffle fries. There's a place out here in Iowa called Legends. It's a sports bar, but they have the same type of waffle fries that are seasoned and crispy. Those I think are the best fries if you get them right with the right seasoning. But you use the word horrible, I think, to describe steak fries. I don't love steak fries, but man, there's not a potato out there that I don't like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you must like your potatoes. We've been talking about French fries for 15 minutes, and you asked me about mashed potatoes before that.
And how about sweet potato fries, Mark?
Oh, they're exceptional. Yeah, if they're made right.
Yeah, they can't be mushy. Got to be crisp.
Yeah, steak fries, again, a bottle of ketchup, if it's sitting right there, then that covers all sorts of sins.
Yeah, well, the fries got to be good even without it, right? I mean,
well, I would hope so. Yeah,
that's the true test for you can mask, and like you said with a meatloaf, you can mask anything with a meatloaf, or with ketchup. But and I'm assuming you grew up with ketchup, not catsup.
Oh, ketchup, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mark, listen, I really wish I could continue this. I got to get to bed. I can't. I know you want to stay on here and talk for a while, but I can't continue this.
Come on, Corey, let's keep this thing going.
Well, listen, all I'll say is enjoy. Let's see, is there anything going on Friday night? There's a couple games going.
We've got a Florida State post game to do. You want to analyze some Florida State football with me?
No, but this is the second straight week of Louisville football on a Friday, correct?
You're absolutely right about that. And I actually was going to make the point at some point tonight. You would think I would have had time to make this point after 3.5 hours, that why is there not a college football game on Thursday night? We know that it has to do with the NFL. Mm-hmm. We know that ESPN controls these things, and Fox control these things. They can schedule games whenever they want and say, we need a game on Thursday night or a doubleheader on Thursday night like we typically have. Okay, number one, there are people that just enjoy college football and don't like the NFL. I hear from them on my chat all the time. So that's first and foremost. Number two, people have to have Amazon to see this NFL game anyway. So that's shutting off what percentage of the country? So why is there not a college football game on tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. And I mean, those networks, I don't really understand, like CBS Sports Network. What are they running during the middle of Thursday night football?
Even ESPN, what do they have this time of year? NBA hasn't started.
No. Baseball game, maybe?
On a Thursday night, maybe.
I don't know. I've said the same thing about Wednesday. I don't understand what goes on Wednesdays. You got Wednesday night basketball on ESPN and NBA season.
Yeah, but Thursday's a more traditional
Well, but why do we
this day and age, football night?
Okay, well, but there's been Wednesday. I'm just saying we got a game on Monday the other night. I'm just saying if you're the MAC or you're one of these small conferences, forget tradition. Let's get some. Let's be unique. Let's establish something, and let's make Wednesday night a thing.
The MAC already does that. They've got their Tuesday, Wednesday games they play all the time. But I'm specifically talking about Thursday. That it seems as though the NFL is scared off college football off of Thursday when they've made this move to Amazon, and most people can't get that or don't want to take that step. And even if the NFL was going to kick a game off at, let's say, 8:30, I always thought that that ESPN and Fox were coming on at like 7 o'clock and starting a game, and then you grab the audience for the first half, and they either flee to the NFL or you've got them hooked in a really good game. I don't get it. And just knowing from working there and knowing the business to a certain extent, I know that live games are what bring people. So even if you're competing against a monster like the NFL, you still win a college football game because you're going to grab that niche. You know, you throw on your Virginia Tech, Duke game, and you're going to get your niche college football fan to watch the game and get a pretty good audience.
And just for the record, there have not been Wednesday night games these last 2 weeks.
I'm not talking about the last 2 weeks. I'm talking about once they step into conference play, they will be playing. If we looked at ESPN's or whoever does schedules, but I always go to ESPN, there will be. Let's go to week 6.
I believe you that there's conference game. I'm talking about now.
Yeah, I got you.
Well, I mean, what would be the problem with two schools of different conferences saying, let's schedule a game on a Wednesday night?
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I thought it was brilliant. I don't know that it's worked, that the MAC has done that and said, obviously nobody's watching us play on Saturday. There's just too many big conferences playing, that let's start scheduling games on Tuesday and Wednesday night. And they're on ESPN2 most of the time, or ESPNU. I don't know I thought it was a great idea. I don't know that it's helped the conference, but October 27th. Now these have to be up against NFL games. There's 3 games on. Why wouldn't there be 1 game on tonight? I just picked October 27th, and there's 3, and 2 of them are Power 5 games: Virginia Tech, NC State, and Utah, Washington State on a Thursday night. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what would be the issue with a West Coast team. I mean, especially on a Thursday night, West Coast team scheduling a game. If you're looking for the late slot anyways, schedule a game at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and people are going to navigate from the NFL game anyways, probably over to, at least some people navigate over to a college football game after, correct?
Why just this week and last week, no Thursday games? Next week, there are 3 Thursday games. Illinois is playing next Thursday.
Who is Illinois playing?
They're playing a non-conference game against Chattanooga on BTN.
Oh my gosh! Why in the why? What is the purpose of that? Is that game at Chattanooga?
No, at Illinois.
Why in the world would you schedule that game? I mean, what? That was obviously before Brett got there that game got scheduled, because that just seems stupid.
And I don't know who's going to be watching this game. West Virginia, Virginia Tech's playing. That 98% of anyone wanting to watch a college football game is going to watch that game.
I'm guessing that Chattanooga, Illinois game was scheduled when Lovie Smith was still there, and he was thinking he was scheduling Bears versus Titans. He forgot that it was Illini versus Snakes or whatever. What are the What are they? They have a weird mascot. Moccasins.
Yes. Lovey thought, that
he thought it was Thursday night football.
Yeah. He thought the Illini could make another Super Bowl run for him.
Yeah. Oh my.
With Rex Grossman at quarterback.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Good little Rex Grossman.
Are you a Bears fan?
No.
You don't like the NFL, do you?
I like the NFL. I'm not a fan of any. I mean, I follow the NFL purely from an Iowa standpoint, from a fantasy football standpoint, I enjoy watching NFL football. You know, I don't like Aaron Rodgers. We've gotten into debates about that. I saw him rip into his receivers prior to the season starting. So,
Yeah. I actually heard that the first pass of the season, a North Dakota State receiver dropped one of his passes and he just ripped him to shreds.
a North Dakota. Okay. Yeah, I think I did hear that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna get into that. I know you like the guy, but he just, to me, becomes less and less likable every year. But, yeah, no, I like the NFL, and I have no issue with. I think it's smart marketing if you're college football by using what they've done that, right? Week 0 and week 1. I think there need to be more teams involved with week 0 and scheduling Sunday, Monday, and I think it's smart the teams that scheduled the Sunday and Monday games in week 1. That's smart marketing, and I think it's smart marketing for the MAC to, I don't know the numbers, but for the MAC to take the Tuesday and Wednesday time slots. And I agree with you, though. There's no reason to. There's a lot of people who are being excluded. I mean, I think in 10 years, it'd be more reasonable to expect the NFL to dominate, even with a streamed game, because I think in 10 years, I expect those numbers. I mean, I think the data would suggest that streaming is only going to increase. There are some people. I just listened to a guy on the radio the other day in Eastern Iowa who's an old school Iowa beat writer, and he was talking about how, well, I don't understand how this media deal with the Big Ten is going to work because there's some people who don't want to stream. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, you're old, and not all old people have problems getting with the times. But Mark, they have marketing teams, right? They have all these companies, including the Big Ten and all these TV networks. They understand the future with demographics, and eventually, I hate to say this, but older people who are stubborn with technology, and I understand it, change and whatnot, those people pass on, and the younger generation, and I'm even saying people in their 40s and 50s who were streaming 10 years prior, now they're the older generation. I don't see them saying, well, now that I'm older, I'm demanding for cable, I'm demanding for satellite television. I mean, I think eventually streaming, isn't it logical to say that streaming will be the norm?
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't have an issue with the NFL doing that, but I do believe, I agree with what you're saying. In the interim,
yes,
why not take advantage of it now? Is it possible too, Mark, with the way college football schedules and these universities schedule, that some of these schedules were created years in advance? And so, there's no reason, there should be able to be some flexibility, knowing now that the NFL is limiting its audience for the time being. There should be some flexibility to say, hey, let's take advantage of that and schedule a game on a Thursday. I agree with you.
Yeah. You're a couple of mid-tier Power 5 teams. You can't, and you can say, you know what, instead of getting buried on the Big Ten network where nobody's going to watch you, you can be on ESPN, exclusive national game.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you've got games on Big Ten Network on Saturdays that are, I mean, at least in certain areas, are on the alternate Big Ten channel because they're regional games.
Yeah. Well, they especially have that early in the season during non-conference play because everybody's playing out of conference. There's 14 games to get in instead of.
But isn't that what we're talking about? We're talking about the non-conference season.
Yeah.
And so what an opportunity for those teams that are playing games that are not being telecast across the region to get in a time slot on a Thursday. Or
I was a little surprised to see that Iowa State was a BTN game.
That has ended up being a BTN game quite a bit when it's in Kinnick. I don't. In fact, I think it was Fox in Fox in 2018. They hadn't played that game in Iowa City since 2018, and I think BTN in 20. That game has ended up on BTN more than you'd think.
I noticed later this season, Michigan State, Minnesota, which is a pretty nice matchup on BTN. I think there must be some kind of stipulation that they bring in a few sizable games.
And I have no problem with that, Mark. From a viewership standpoint, can we both agree it's much easier and much more enjoyable to watch a game on BTN than it is to watch it on Fox Sports 1?
What's the difference? Because of the announcers?
Well, first of all, I don't want to listen to what's his name, Tim Brando. I don't want to listen to Tim Brando.
Yeah.
All right, and then doesn't it seem like FS1 commercials are longer? TV timeouts actually longer.
So Tim Brando is one thing. So at times I'm very opinionated on what broadcasters I like and which ones I disdain. But at the same time, I think, okay, would I ever want Tim Brando on here? Absolutely, I would. Do I care if he's on? No, I don't care. We can, our channel will go on and do just fine without him. But if somebody told me, okay, I got an opportunity for Tim Brando to be on your show, but I'd say absolutely, I want him on here. Because I once got in a heated Twitter debate with Tim Brando.
Did you really?
Yes, it was. I don't know. I don't know how we got into it or how we connected, but it was something about an expanded playoff and the Big Ten, and he was spewing out all sorts of nonsense that I shot down. And we went back and forth. There must have been 25 tweets back and forth to each other.
Well, he's the type of guy I have a lot of respect for the time he's put in and what he's done.
Sure.
But I think it's painful to listen to him call games.
I guess I've got a bit of a love-hate with Tim Brando's broadcasting, because sometimes I think it's somewhat amusing, but other times it's a bit swarmy.
Well, it's not quite to the Bill Walton experience. I know you're not a college basketball guy. Have you ever watched Bill Walton
I've
call
heard
games?
Plenty of Bill Walton through the years, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean it's not quite to that level, but
But see, with Bill Walton, what I can liken it to with Tim Brando is that sometimes it's amusing to me and sometimes it's annoying. There's a fine line with me. Sometimes I get amused by it. Other times I'm like, we're watching a 92-88 game with a minute left. Can you just shut up about whatever you're going on about? This is where I need basketball analysis, some like Dick Vitale does not have sensitivity toward the game. He obviously loves the sport of basketball. That's not what we're talking about. But he has no sensitivity toward the situation in games. Like, he's always talking about, and I'm going back years because I haven't watched a college basketball game really in about 10 years. But like, I would just pull my hair out listening to him in a game where the play-by-play guy would be like Dan Schulman, would be begging him basically to break this down. There's 17 seconds left. We're in a 1-point game, and you're going, I can't wait to get to Cameron Indoor Stadium next Wednesday. It's going to be awesome, baby. He's like, no, be in the moment. When we're in a 25-point game with 3 minutes, that's when you do that.
Mark, I just have one thing to say. Yes. How do you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me a break. All right. I gotta let you go. It's approaching midnight here and 1 a.m. out there. And anyways.
Hey, I got $10 super chat from Tim calling.
Yeah, see, it pays to stay.
Oh yes.
It pays to stay an extra half hour. So yeah, it's
being likened to Lou Gehrig now.
After YouTube takes their cut, you're making a little over $10 an hour, Mark. So
what? I didn't make $10 an hour tonight. No way.
No, I'm saying on the since I've been on the phone.
Oh, maybe. Oh shoot, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah. One of our great callers, David Greenshield, made the mistake of, and it's when I say made the mistake, I'm not picking on him for my own internal reasons, because I made this very clear a few months ago when we had a massive live stream going over like the channel priorities, what people want to see, our goals, that sort of thing. We did that deal maybe 6 months ago, I guess. And I clearly pointed out to all the people that were telling me how hard I work in the chat, I just went on a rant about how I never want to hear that ever again in my life. Like that is not what I want to be. I don't want to be the hardest working man on YouTube.
Yeah.
That is not what I want to be. I want to be the guy that works half as much.
Yep.
And
work smarter,
yes.
smarter, not harder, Mark.
Yes, absolutely. Not the hardest working man on YouTube. No, that is only going to get me to work less.
Well, how do you do, Mark? How do you do? Okay. Hey, listen, enjoy your night. And don't forget, Iowa, Nevada, marquee night game Saturday, 6:30 on the BTN. So
nice.
We'll enjoy it, Mark.
Well, I'm curious about a bit of as we sign off tonight. Some maybe you've get some understanding of YouTube better than I do on this. If on any of these nights I go off the air, but I leave the feed on and people just talk, just chat,
well,
earning revenue from that?
I guess people gave you super chats through that. But I mean, they're not.
No, not the super chats. Am I earning ad rev? Like if I get another 1,000 views over the course of the next 3 hours?
I don't think they're playing ads during the live stream at the tail.
Oh,
am I correct?
It's going to have to be after the. Yeah, it's going to have to be on the rewatch.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, technically, but I mean, and that's what people don't realize, that you're on here for 3.5 hours, but they're probably only seeing one ad, which is great for the viewer, but not doing much for you.
No, it's doing nothing for me.
And other thing people don't realize, and I'll say this because I'm a caller, people take a big cut of these. YouTube takes a cut of these super chats. It'd be much more it's much more advantageous for people to give to you via, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal.
Yes, I'm thankful that somebody just did that.
There you go. That's more advantageous for them, and it's more advantageous for you. Not that the super chats like Tim's here on the screen are not good, but YouTube's doing okay. Is it fair to say YouTube's doing okay financially, Mark?
That's what I understand. I also remind people that to use the Amazon link, because Amazon's doing just fine as well.
Yeah.
They're worth $1.7 trillion.
Is that good?
I'll have to figure that out and get back to you, but it sounds pretty good.
I like how we still have Michael Penix's numbers on the
screen. I should have them memorized by now. I'll forever know Michael Penix's, passer rating from.
Once again, you look at those 2019, 2020 numbers. Those are some impressive
We're not going back
numbers.
there.
158 passer rating and a 137
Phenomenal.
passer rating. So
the best
anyway,
in the country.
Yeah. All right, Mark.
All right, Corey.
Enjoy your night. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. For Corey, for Tim, for everybody that's been on tonight, appreciate you being here. And I'm going to leave for my text messages that are coming in. All right. We're going to be here after the Florida State game. I contemplated doing a Florida State watch party, but we'll be here after the Florida State game. There we go. Great to have everybody here. We'll see you on Friday night.